But I'm happy over there too.
No, you're good. Stay here. Why? No.
I don't care.
All right. Looks like we are live, ready to go. Okay. I'd like to call this meeting to order. If you'd all please rise. Arlene, could you lead us in prayer, please, this evening?
Dear Lord, please lead us in this time of our community to make good judgment, great decisions for our community. Bless our folks who are keeping us, our first responders, as well as our military across the country and across the nations. Please, dear Lord, keep peace and harmony with our community and lead us in your good graces. Amen.
Amen. Councilman Purton, could you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Yes, sir.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Should we just do our own?
I guess we're all here, or except Mike. Mike will be here in a little bit.
Councilwoman
so-
Garumba,
Here.
Councilwoman Carr,
Here.
Councilmember Purton,
Here.
Mayor Simmons,
Here.
Councilman Corey. Here. Councilmember Forbes. Here.
Okay, everybody. Public comment on agenda items. Do we have public comment that's been sent in?
We do have printed comments as well, and I'm going to check right now for Laura to see if anyone is on hold.
Okay.
Online, which I believe they are.
You have one
Great,
person
thank you.
waiting to give public comment, Daniel Cox, via Zoom.
Daniel Cox via Zoom.
Yes, Daniel, thanks for being with us, and please feel free to speak now for public comment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good evening, Council. I want to introduce myself. I'm Daniel Cox. I am an attorney. I serve as General Counsel to the Bayside Improvement Community Development District and the Bay Creek Community Development District, which comprise all of the lands within the Pelican Landing community, some of which are within the city of Bonita Springs and subject to the stormwater assessment that was imposed last year. You may recall, those of you that were on the council at the time, that I appeared at that meeting and I expressed concerns that there was no appeal process that would allow properties that could show that they derive none of the special benefits that are necessary to subject them to these types of special assessments, enhanced use, enjoyment, value, marketability, or fire protection from the city's facilities that are going to be financed by the stormwater fee. And you passed your ordinance, and in accordance with the ordinance, we had to file a lawsuit within 30 days to preserve our rights to challenge that deficiency in your program. Pelican Landing community, the surface water management system consisting of like 91 interconnected lakes and a couple of outfalls, one to Spring Creek and some to Estero Bay, has an environmental resource permit, and the districts are partners with Lee County as co-permittees under the MPDES program. Now, under the MPDES program, the Estero Bay Declaration of Impairment triggers a process where all the stakeholders that are involved with the inputs to Estero Bay develop what's called a Basin Management Action Plan, or BMAP for short. The BMAP, what it does is it identifies sources that are contributors to the issue that has caused the impairment and identifies steps that they have to take to correct those deficiencies in the quality of the water that they're discharging. The proposal you have before you tonight doesn't fix the problem that you still don't have an appeal process that addresses the fact that none of this property discharges into the city's systems. We are governed by EPA under the MPDES program and the South Florida Water Management District under Environmental Resource Permit Program.
Sir, about 30 more seconds, please.
That's fine.
And then there'll be opportunities later in the meeting. But for now, about 30 seconds, if you could wrap up, please, that'd be wonderful.
Thank you. Would have loved to have had some input in this sooner, but despite the fact that I agreed to a 90-day extension of the city's, this is the first time I saw this document was yesterday, and I'm a little disappointed in that. The process is onerous, it's costly, and to the extent it exceeds the requirements that are imposed on the districts by their environmental resource permit or the MPDES program, and the BMAP that will be developed later are most likely preempted to the state. And I think we need to keep talking and revisit this program, or we're going to have to move forward.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for your comments, sir. If you have some later on, we'd love to hear back from you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there other members or are member of the public?
Addison?
And
Okay.
before we do that, Mr. Mayor, it is true, I transmitted the final Stan Tech presentation on the credit system to Mr. Cox yesterday, so he has not had, I don't know if he's had time to circle back with his client. If he is available to stay on the line until we get to that Stan Tech presentation, I would appreciate that in case we can clarify issues, because the CDD has abated their lawsuit with the city in order to this process to move forward.
Okay. Thank you, Derek.
Addison, do you have another caller?
There's no more Zoom public comment.
For the record, Mayor, just to make sure, we did receive public comments via email. We have posted them online. You should have a copy of them in front of you as well. We did receive a comment from Mr. John Spear regarding the closure of beaches. We received a comment from Dwight Esmond regarding the City Hall renovations. We received a public comment from Linda Schwartz about the location of City Hall meetings. We received a copy.
Could I just interrupt you?
Sure.
I believe that one of the comments that the public has made is that we actually read, and I don't want us to read the whole thing, but maybe just capsize, like, so John Spears and other association members, because they want it read.
I disagree.
It's kind of, I mean, and Dwight's outside asking that his, points be read out loud. I mean, it's just something that maybe we could do since we're not allowing them in.
Do we have them linked on the website?
We do have them linked on the website, but I have them here as well. So it's the pleasure of the council. Whatever.
Yeah, just for edification, all the comments that were received that we have, they can be viewed in their entirety by any of the public who are watching online. But anything new coming in, I don't think would qualify. We'd have to read that out loud.
And I read them all. I don't.
I read them all as well.
Yeah.
No, I'm going to object to not reading that. I'm going to also object to this meeting. We have a number of people that are wanting to make public comment about everything from beach closures to the renovation of City Hall to the, evidently also with respect to the stormwater mitigation credits. And we're locking these people out of this meeting. I, for one, do not understand if it's not safe for these people to be in our meeting, if it's not safe for outside presenters who I understand will present information about the City Hall renovation project. If it's not safe for them to be here, I'm not sure I understand why it's safe for us to be here. Further, I think the simplest solution would be to delay this council meeting for a week to allow the testing to take place of our employees that needs to take place, to have that testing come back so we know what's going on, and just simply move the meeting a week so that we can allow public comment as we normally do. So I would move the adjournment of this meeting until Wednesday, July the 8th at 5:30 PM.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
May I ask a clarifying question? You felt your safety was at risk by being here. Were you not given an option by staff to come in person? Because they gave me the option, I decided that I would come in person, but if they didn't give you that option, that's a discussion I'd like to have with them. I'm just to clarify.
They certainly gave me that option.
Okay.
But I
That's what
felt
was-
it incumbent, because I knew the rest of the council, by the time I was contacted, had agreed to come to this meeting. But I felt it incumbent, once I learned that the public was not going to be in the meeting and allowed to talk at the meeting, to come and express dissatisfaction that we're holding a meeting in the first place. I felt I would be more effective to come and represent the public at the meeting, express my concern and dissatisfaction, and simply raise the issue with my fellow council members in a respectful way while I'm present at the meeting, even though I feel like I'm at risk somewhat. And I'm to the age at 75 when, we have to be careful. But that's why I'm raising it. If I'm at the meeting, if everything's safe for me to be at the meeting, I know of no reason why the public can't be at the meeting. And I would simply ask that we adjourn the meeting for a week, find out the test results, do whatever we have to do, and then hold a meeting where we can have the public here to give their information. Evidently, we had a number of people out in the parking lot. And it's just too bad that we are going to, if we're going to go ahead with this meeting, that we're doing so.
Laura and then Fred,
Yes.
I think, yeah.
Our attorney before just clarified why the public isn't here. It's out of all due precaution. It's not out of, us saying you're not allowed in. It's we're requesting that you just participate how we've been doing it in the past, Zoom, electronically, virtually, whatever you want to say. And they have their voices being heard. So we are conducting a business forward, and it is your responsibility to take care of yourself. And if you feel that you need to come out to risk yourself to speak for the folks in the parking lot, that's one thing. But Dwight has his comments here. They are available for the public to read. It is, again, to delay renovation of the building, City Hall building. I'm sorry, we've moved beyond that, I believe.
Well, no, we haven't moved beyond that, because I intend to, if this motion goes down, I'm going to move that we table the City Hall conversation until the next weekend, till the next meeting. And, we can stay here all night. I can make motions all that I intend to. But this is nuts.
Hey, Chris, if this is not going to be a week for you to find a way to get rid of the hotel renovation, I'll give you a second right now. Because, I think we're going to go in circles about this all day. We have 18 things that the people want us to talk about that we're going to purposely punt for another week so that everybody can be comfy. If that's what you guys want to do, then fine. But honestly, there are significant things that we're supposed to be voting on tonight. If you guys want to wait, fine. But if you think the backlash was bad before, wait till we do nothing when Collier just...
Well, let me ask you something, Jesse. Do you know what the value of this building is going to be after the renovations?
Here's the question. Well, my issue with the renovation, really, first of all, it was before us. So,
Should we get,
We're off.
wait.
Okay.
I've got a motion on the floor. Does anybody
Okay, there's a
want to-
motion on the floor to delay this meeting for a week. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, there's a second. Oh, now discussion, Fred.
Well, first of all, I think that Chris has got a good point. I think maybe, how many people are out in the parking lot? There's probably only a handful by now. We could let them in, put the chairs around. Secondly, even if I support waiting till next meeting to look at the renovation, because we want to make sure we have the cost to replicate adequately presented this building with the improvements, number one. Number two, gets our real estate consultant to give us what was this property worth before the virus struck, which would give us some idea that if we didn't do it right now, what we could get out of this a little later, because you ain't going to get it now. The other thing is, I think even if we were going to adjourn it, I think we ought to at least get to discuss about closing the beaches, because if we kick this thing down the road 10 days, we hit the 4th of July, and we're going to have people from all over the state, the East Coast, coming over here, even from Collier, because they closed their beaches. So I think we need to at least.
And I want to talk about beach parking passes. That was at the end of the meeting. I didn't want to do another additional addendum, which addresses that exact issue. But if we're not having the meeting, none of this stuff is even going to get talked about, which is kind of the, you know.
So there's a motion on the floor, and there's a second to delay this meeting 1 week. Is there further discussion on that? Amy?
Well, we can't really do it 1 week because we don't have a scheduled meeting, and I don't know about anybody else, but the 8th is not good for me. And so it'll be 2 weeks. And what makes you think that the situation will be any different 2 weeks from now? I think we have to prepare to go into a different mode of operating. We have so many things that are on our plate that we need to discuss it. Now, if we have to go all virtual, that's fine with me. And I'm in the same position you are. You know, I'm a super senior, just like you. And this is why I have a mask. So when I feel uncomfortable, I put it on.
Well,
And that's what other people should be doing.
So just explain to me why the public being in here, if,
The public is not here because
are we protecting ourselves from them, or are we protecting the public?
no, we're protecting
The decision
them.
was made to protect the public. So what has transpired is today, a few hours before the meeting, and unfortunately, the only way we can have this discussion and vote on how to proceed is to have you in person. And it took several hours for us to get a hold of everyone. The issue was that we've had several secondary contacts with COVID-positive individuals with city employees at a variety of facilities over a period of time that we have not identified yet. Some of those city employees may have been inside City Hall, some of them may have not. For us to do what we have done in the past, where we were in phase one, where we allowed the city staff to come, or individuals to come in on a limited basis, unfortunately would possibly put city employees who do not feel comfortable being at City Hall, and city employees who may themselves been exposed in direct contact with the public. So rather than going to our prior actions at Zoom-only meetings, and given the limited amount of time, this was the decision we came to protect the public.
The problem is that we put out a public notice somewhere between 3 and 3:30 that they were not going to be allowed in here. And I just don't think that's the proper way to run a meeting. It seems to me you need to give at least as much notice to the public as you need to give it a notice of the agenda for the public. You know, there were people that showed up here, obviously, that didn't get the message. There's other people that probably would send in email comments if they knew that that was the only way that they could comment.
Under less extraordinary circumstances, I agree with you.
Fred?
Yeah, number one, I do support what Chris is saying, that we need to let the people be able to come in and either support something we're going to do or tell us why they don't agree with it, which doesn't mean that we'll go along. Secondly, I think it's imperative that we immediately return to meeting at a big place. Why a big place? Because I was over at Fire Station 4, which is supposedly where we're going to move. They had a neighborhood meeting that I went to. Didn't say anything, but there was probably 30 people there, and the room was almost, whether it was 30 plus maybe 6 or 8 people part of the presentation. It's not big enough to give this social spacing. If we're going to go on, I think we need to allow at least something, a meeting someplace where we can accommodate at least 80 to 100 people, because we are going to have contentious issues coming, different zoning projects, I don't want to name them, the City Hall renovation. The people have the right to tell us why they think we're either right or that we're crazy or whatever else. So But I do think even if we adjourned a meeting, I would like to see something done about the beaches. I don't expect the county to do it. I don't think DeSantis was, but I think we need to go on record saying we're requesting this because you're going to be inundated from people not from here, and some of them will be probably
Can
bringing.
we stick on one thing?
I was just going to say, there's a motion on the floor to either have this meeting tonight or not have it and push it out a week or 2 weeks or whatever that may be. Chris's motion was for a week. So there's a motion to suspend this meeting for a week, and there's a second. Is there further discussion on that point only?
Clarification question. If we do vote this way right now, does the meeting end right now? Meaning we're not voting on beaches, we're not voting on, the meeting is
Correct.
done.
Meeting's over if we vote to.
I'll amend my motion to include, so that we can have the discussion about the beaches.
Well, and that includes the beach parking thing that I want to talk about.
Yeah, that's,
So we have our motion and we have a second. Okay, is there further discussion?
I want to know what exactly it is. So we're going to pick and choose what we'll discuss on the emotion, on the agenda that we have announced. So aren't we contradicting ourselves?
Yep.
So we either adjourn.
that's
or
the
we have a
motion,
meeting.
Laura, that's the motion.
Okay, so the motion is to suspend.
Not pick and choosing.
Yeah, correct. Laura, you're fine. So let's go on to the vote. I agree with you, Laura. Thank you for that. So there's been a motion to suspend this meeting immediately and have it next Wednesday, and there's a second. Is there further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Carumba,
No?
Councilmember Purdon,
No.
Councilmember Carr,
No.
Mayor Simmons,
No.
Councilmember Corey,
No. Oh, sorry.
Yes,
Councilmember Gibson,
No.
Councilmember Forbes.
I vote yes only because he amended it to say we would deal with the beaches.
All right, and God bless you, Fred, but a yes or a no will do it. Okay, so now we're going to have our meeting, and I say this with all due respect, and I mean it. If you want to make do you guys want to call in if you're uncomfortable for the rest of the meeting, or what would you like to do?
Well, if there's not very many people out in the parking lot, why don't we put the.
But I'm talking about the two members that aren't comfortable
No,
being here tonight.
Comfortable being here.
Okay, but I just want to, in the abundance of caution,
I'm not comfortable if the public can't be. If there's only a handful out there, they could get in here.
is there anybody outside? Do we know that? I had seen Rick Steinmeier pulling away when I pulled in, but,
No.
We said
to
no.
public.
Yeah.
So you can't,
No. Let's just,
you can't
Okay.
do an exception for the people who are here.
so team, we're going to move on to the consent agenda. Take a look at the, yes.
I want to announce, you did have, I wanted to make sure for the record, you did also had an email from Barbara Ogle, public comment that was posted regarding City Hall property.
Okay.
Renovation, and Daniel H. Cox, who did reserve the right to call in, the attorney for Pelican Landing, which he did.
Okay.
Maybe before we move forward, one of the options that we had identified to all those who showed up today was that we would call them on their items and allow them to speak. Perhaps we could take a brief moment to find out if any of the people who did show up, took that option. I believe many of them are probably running home so they can watch on TV, but I'm not sure that we haven't got those people intending to call in on those items.
Okay. Happy to find out, and we can proceed with the meeting, and if they want to speak, we can break for whenever it's convenient for them to speak and let them speak.
Kyle, if you're listening, could you please just get with me, and we'll continue to track as they come in. Additionally, for the public watching, they can continue to email in their phone number as well, and we can put them in the queue to be part of the public comment.
Absolutely.
Okay. So consent agenda, council, what's your pleasure?
so move.
I want to move separate item A.
Okay. So,
And I'm going to comment on B and also, I'm going to comment on A also.
A, okay.
But I'm going to say yes.
A and B? Okay. So, motion to approve C and D, is there a second?
Well, we can put B in there, I just want to comment on it.
Okay. So we're going to pull A, but we'll approve the rest. There's a motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, motion to approve B, C, and D, and a second. Is there further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Carr,
Aye.
Councilmember Purdon,
Aye.
Councilmember Corey,
Aye.
Councilmember Forbes,
Aye.
Councilmember Gibson,
Aye.
Mayor Simmons,
Aye.
and Councilmember Carumba.
Aye.
We're rotating which one of us does it.
Yeah, that's good. Hey, mixing it up. Chris, item A.
Yeah, with respect to item A, my question gets to the budget resolution. We are pulling impact fee funding from the Sun Trail multi-use pathways and general fund funding from Bonita Beach Road Vision implementation. It's my understanding that these particular items fall into a category of CIP projects, for which there has not been any planning or any substantive work done since they were put into that budget. They may be placeholders for future funding and so forth. So my question is how many of these so-called placeholder budget items are there? Because we've had a conversation about what interest rates are available in the financial market, and I'm just trying to understand the total amount of the 48 million in the CIP that is really sort of in an area where not much has been done. Somebody thought it was a good idea to have a line item for that item. There are certain things in the CIP which we do every year, such as road overlays, other kinds of projects which are year in and year out. There's other projects which we put money in for future grant matching purposes. There's others, items where we've done planning on, such as a quadrant plan and so forth, and it's a long-term type project. But these appear to be items in the CIP budget that fall into the category of, well, we'll get around to doing something on it someday. So I'm just wondering, out of the 48 million, how much money's in the CIP budget that's like that, that we could pull for other purposes as we go forward into the budget. You know, we're going to be subject, I think, to some state mandated reductions in the amount of sales tax revenues. We may have people in town that are not going to be able to afford real estate taxes. So I'm just wondering how much are in these, what I call sort of cookie jars, that could be made available before we get too far into the budget process or talking about financing. Is it 5 million? That was what was originally in the Sun Trail budget. Is it 10 million? Is it 15 million? What is it? It seems a little strange that we're funding this out of CIP, because at one point in time, somebody thought it was a good idea to put these into the CIP, and there were policy decisions made by council to put them in CIP and to fund them the way they're funded. So I'm just wondering how much of that there is.
I appreciate that, Chris. Arlene, or I know we're limited here with staff that's here,
We
but
did have an opportunity to speak with Councilman Corey as well, and what I spoke with Ann about and Matt as well on is that a good opportunity during the budget process is for us to go through each of these projects and maybe have a identification key to each of them. For example, like the Spring Creek Restoration Plan, we do know that it's moved past planning as in design, because we have a committed contract with the federal government and the state government regarding the LMS grant there. But as an example, yes, the Sun Trail was a project, a commitment of a strategic priority. We know that's a long-range plan, and it is being held with the transportation funding there, and so it could be looked at to be replenished in the later year. We do know we're going to have some preliminary planning with other jurisdictions regarding that, but most likely not in the amount of 5 million in this fiscal year. With the Bonita Beach Road visioning, that was a layout as we could have opportunities where we could partner with private property owners along Bonita Beach Road to look at those connector roads for the future. And also, to look at, we probably at some point would like to talk about the aesthetics of Bonita Beach Road and have a master plan of what we'd like to see, what our vision is for that. But we still have to work with Lee County on that as well, because it is a Lee County road. And it would be very similar to US 41, should we choose to do any aesthetic improvements. There would be a contract with Lee County, and then most likely the cost of the ongoing maintenance would be back to the city as well. So we currently do not have master plans for that as well, but we know as a strategic priority, Bonita Beach Road visioning is high on the list, and it was to have opportunities as they presented themselves to us. But I think what might be helpful is during the budget process, if we could go through each CIP and identify it as either planning, design, or construction. For example, you have on there a Terry Street project, which is under construction. So those funds are committed.
Fred?
Yeah, I distinctly remember on the Sun Trail what happened there. I'm not saying I agree with this, but Councilman O'Flynn asked that we put a substantial amount of money over as a placeholder, because he said if that money's shown there, it'll cause us to more likely get a grant. I'm just giving you background information. I think, though, that's more than fair game to relook at that, because things are different.
Well, I agree, and
I said I was going to comment on it.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I guess a little bit, one part of my problem is that these funds appeared in the CIP project lines as part of a process to get to a budget. I assume there's public input that was taken, or there was some promises made. Perhaps the Bonita Beach Road visioning project was, I don't know how old that is. I think it goes back a few years. But I think there may be people in town that remember it. I know the merchants on West Bonita Beach Road remember it. They talk about, well, there were supposed to be improvements made west of Vanderbilt. So all I'm saying is, it troubles me a little bit that, we use these funds to pay something. And it seems to me if we went through a process to put them into the CIP, we ought to reverse that project to take them out of the CIP so people understand what these funds are and why we're choosing them to pay Mosaic's impact fee settlement agreement. So that's my point. And
I understand your funding, concern that you've raised there. I mean, I'm glad you brought it up, because I wanted to speak on this too. And I did have a conversation with Arlene about sort of designating different processes or points of the process for all these things, but we are, as part of our charter, allowed to rearrange this from time to time, and I think it happens all the time. I was alerted to the Sun Trail because the reason why we have that, and in fact, there's, I think, $400,000 that came in from Lee County to do the study, to do the Sun Trail along the railroad, and that's going to be going on probably this year. So we are proud. Once they do the study, they're going to ask for participation from all the people along the way, and that's why the rest of that money was there. And the way I see these transfers, is that there are temporary changes that we're going to, like this thing we'd want to replenish at some time, probably not in this fiscal year or the next, the 2021. We might want to do it in 2022. So that question that you raised is important, because we might have to put it back from other uses of our, our impact fees, which is where they came from. The general fund on the Bonita Beach Road, that's, we could always put it in, but we're just moving around the impact fees for one purpose or another. But I raised the thing about Sun Trail because I don't think we should lose this opportunity when we have this planning process that started with the Lee County. We have members of the Lee County Commission that seem to be on board, which they never would be before, and whether or not it's because they, we said, we're serious about this, and we put that money in our CP, whether we helped them to get on board, I don't know. But we don't need that $5 million right now. We don't even need the this extra money that we're taking out there, so that's, but I think that, these kinds of rearrangements, we always do. I mean, it's kind of routine. If we were taking the whole thing out and saying we never want to, we're not saying we're not in favor of these projects or these things that we wanted to do. We're just saying we're not doing it. We wouldn't do them right now whether we had the money in there anyway, because they're not ready to be done. None of these. That's why we could move them out.
Jesse, you had a point, and then Chris.
I just wanted to say that I couldn't agree more on the Sun Trail than what Councilwoman Carumba just eloquently stated. As far as the impact fees, like the Mosaic project, I probably am I don't know. I could be one of the most annoyed council people about how that project actually happened, because between 2 and 5, we're right in the mix of it. I walked my district 2.5 times, and I can tell you that project came up quite a bit. People don't like it. They feel as if they were sold a bill of goods that hasn't come to fruition. It's not affordable, and it's not aesthetically what they said it would be. There's no elevators. I don't believe the quality of the construction is what we wanted. The thing that is the problem, the thing that gives me a little bit of pause is that they did their part in regards to the impact fees. They did their part. They did what they said they were going to do, and they actually went above and beyond that. So though we don't like how it has turned out, they've gone through their obligations. We made a deal with them. We said they were going to pay them if they did ABC. They did A, B, C, and D. So to now not pay them, I feel a little bit like we're going back on our word, and I feel like our word has to mean something. So I kind of have a problem not giving it to them based on the fact that they did contractually what they were supposed to do, and they went above and beyond. If that type of behavior, if we can't reward good behavior like that, what can we, I mean, I feel it's a bad precedent to send with people who might want to do future projects with us, so.
No, I agree. There is a little issue, which we probably don't want to talk about, but the mechanism by which they were awarded these impact fees were not contractually done. They were verbally done, and I know
Inappropriately,
I know the staff knows that that's not the proper way to do it. So there is that disappointment, but I agree, that the deal was made, so we have to finish it up, and then we have to just provide the money, and this is how we're going to do it. So I'm comfortable with this. I don't think that's really the discussion. I mean, I'm in favor of their being paid what we think they're supposed to be paid, right. And that's how you get things, improvements in a project. And I agree. I said in the beginning I didn't like the project, so I'm.
Right.
But we, it was passed, and that's what we got. So let's live with it now and make the best of it.
Exactly.
Chris, did you have another?
Yeah, I'm not making a motion that we don't pay Mosaic. I think we had that vote. I voted to pay Mosaic. It was just in the process of reviewing, how we're going to pay the budgeted monies over and above the budgeted monies for City Hall improvements. And I looked at the budget resolution, and I looked back at this particular agenda item, and it just raised the issue in my mind as to why are we using this particular way to pay Mosaic? Why are we picking things out of the CIP list to pay for amounts over and above what was budgeted for the City Hall improvements? And why these particular line items? Are there other line items that were options? Are there, and why do we have, just in general, why do we have 48 million in CIP? And I've been through this with Arlene and Matt, but there does seem to be something, a certain amount, I'm not sure what it is because I've asked them to tell me, but there's a certain amount of the CIP that items which I look at as no more than sort of board designated, or let's create something and we'll see how it works out over the next few years. That could, and when we get into that budget discussion, what I want to know with respect to the CIP budget is how many dollars do we really have where we can have a conversation about reallocation. Is it 5 million? Is it 10 million? Is it 12 million? Whatever it is. And, you know, I'm looking for, personally, money to be reallocated to be made available for the country club purchase up north of Shangri-La. If I'm pulling money out to settle Mosaic and to possibly fund the city hall renovation, well, why not? Is there money available that we could advance towards the purchase price of the country club to fix the stormwater system up north of Shangri-La? So that's the only reason I brought this item up.
That's what we're going to talk about at the budget. I mean,
Yeah.
we're going to talk about,
But I
that
just-
was my understanding, that we were going to review all these potential expenses in active projects and inactive projects.
Right.
So I think, at the budget hearing. So I think that would be appropriate there, and I don't disagree with your comment at all.
Okay, so, I'm not making a motion, I just want to make those comments, and that's all.
Okay.
And I just want to talk about
Comment on
something
B,
fun. I'm sorry, instead of all this heavy stuff. I don't know about you, but it's nice to, I did meet with Susie Valentine on the Gulf Coast Garden Club, and I don't know, I can't even remember when that presentation was. It 2 or 3 years ago when they came and said, Suzanne was here, and they wanted to put the Blue Star Memorial along 41. Well, that didn't work. So they found a spot, and I met with her right along Old 41, and Matt has met with her, and it's a place where they can be put. And I think, and they're going to put a little garden there, and she talked about all her plants, so we had a sort of a happy time together. And I think that it'll be a nice addition to, it's the the western part of, by the banyan tree, it's right up there. It's really nice, so I'm looking forward to when they're doing it. And I'm very appreciative of their taking the initiative and not giving up, because I think they've been working on it for 3 years.
Right, so, motion to approve items A and B.
Oh, we already did B.
Okay, so
Make a motion to approve A.
And I'll second that. Okay, further discussion on item A? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Carr.
Aye.
Mayor Simmons.
Aye.
Councilmember Corey.
Aye.
Councilmember Gibson.
Aye.
Councilmember Forbes.
Aye.
Councilmember Carumba.
Aye.
Councilmember Purdon.
Okay, we're going to move on to proclamations and presentations. Item A is adopt stormwater utility fee adjustment and mitigation credit program and presentation, and this is green sheet number 20-07173. Arlene?
Thank you, Mayor. I am going to add Matt on my cell phone here so he can be listening into your questions as well.
Great.
And we do have a virtual presentation by our consultant at this time. So Kyle and Addison, could you help us with that? And I'm going to connect Matt.
Great, thank you.
Kyle and Addison?
Addison, you're on mute.
I'm going to call her.
I'll go up there. Bother them.
Well, Amy, thanks for sticking with that garden and the, sorry, that's
Oh,
really
I didn't do
great.
it.
But you did.
Anyway.
They knew that you'd still be there.
Okay, the bridge is not connecting on the phone. Kyle will be down here in just a second.
Okay.
Bye. Okay, do you want us to move to the next item then? But that also is this is virtual also.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to do it right.
Okay, so Mayor and Council, could we move on past the presentations? They're gonna restart the bridge. If you wanna move on to Mayor and Council member items.
Okay, let's move on to mayor and council member items. The first addendum is a discussion regarding beach closures over the holiday weekend. This is Councilman Chris Corey, green sheet 20-07176. Chris?
Yes, as you know, Collier County limited the beach hours, I think from 9 to 11 or something like that in the morning, and then 5 to dusk in the evening. I think the beaches have been perhaps closed in Marco, Sanibel, Captiva, so forth. I'm concerned about not only people coming from the East Coast, but people coming up to Lee County from Collier County, because right now Lee County has not done anything to limit the hours on the beaches. My thought was that perhaps we ought to issue a resolution asking Lee County to at least mirror what Collier County has done. Otherwise, I'm afraid we're going to have our beaches overrun. I think knowing that our beach facility at Bonita Bay is out on Hickory. I've seen what happens out on Hickory, for example, in situations like this. People come in, they park in driveways, they block driveways, they pull in people's yards. People on Hickory get very upset. Bonita Springs people sort of get shut out of the beaches. And I think that with the spike in the COVID cases, the fact that Collier County has taken this action is going to force people into Lee County. I would request that we ask Lee County to at least adopt a provision that limits the hours of the Lee County beaches. As I understand it from Cecil Pendergrass, that the Lee County manager is able to do this on his own without county commissioners meeting again this week, because that was outlined in their item to limit the hours or close the beaches in connection with Memorial Day holiday.
You are unmuted.
So I would ask that we direct staff to draft a letter for approval that the mayor can sign, that would simply make the request that the beaches in Lee County have the same hours as the beaches in Collier County.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Fred?
No, I support what Chris is saying. In fact, there's a little hooker to this. The only beach that Lee controls is that public beach by dock. The rest of them, it's the state of Florida. From the high tide mark down, the state owns the beach. So we need to actually ask the governor's office to close or limit to whatever. I'm not saying it'll get approved, but I think we need to do it. I asked staff to draft up a couple letters, which I think y'all got, on options, which at least it supports what you're saying, but also covers the Florida side.
So this wasn't sent?
Correct, those were not, no.
I thought these were sent out already.
I did too.
I was not pleased because I thought that's something that should definitely go through all of us. I was really not pleased. Okay, I'm glad to hear that. Whew.
No, the Councilmember Forbes asked that staff have a emailed copy out to you all today, and those were, and he asked that they be drafted so that should you choose to send them, that they would be sent out this evening from staff. So that was the request we had.
At least we would be on the record if we do this. But we don't, because there's more, you are going to have a lot more people here than likely you think.
Arlene, could we have a report? You know, our beaches were open on Memorial Day,
Yes.
when I believe the East Coast beaches were also closed. What happened there?
And so I did have a report from Captain Lee to share with you that, yes, they did experience compliance from the community when there were no significant issues to report during Memorial Day weekend. As always, there were a few people that needed to be educated. However, they were very respective. The Sheriff's Office does have a slight concern for the weekend, is that there could be several folks coming from out of town, but they will continue to have the adequate patrols on the beach. Community policing has reassigned their schedules to cover the beaches this weekend as well.
And then they would patrol the parking and all that other stuff too, right? So
I'd like to make,
who would do the parking? I mean, like if they were parking illegally, how would that be handled?
Well, I think their first response are any disturbances, they'll be dealing with that first. I know if they're blocking right-of-way or if there's a tow-away zone, there's an opportunity that private property owners could have vehicles towed if they park inappropriately on private property. I think their top priority will be disturbances and compliance as well on the beach. I'm sure they'll look at the parking as if anything's egregious to stopping traffic. But I think safety is probably their first priority.
Fred, did you have something else?
well, yeah, I think it's worth pointing out that in the end of May, we were in real good shape on new cases and all that compared to what's going on today. And I'm not in favor of closing down the economy, but I think we do need to do what we can to reduce the spread of stuff, because you will get an influx. How many? I don't know.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, Jesse.
I would just like, while we're discussing this topic, I would like to, I don't know if you all saw or not, but I'd like to publicly say that I think Commissioner Taylor in Collier County was completely out of line. I think to go on the news and tell people Lee County's not that far and encourage the East Coast to come to our beaches, you know, with friends like that, who needs enemies? And I think that was a very bad way to act as far as neighborly conduct goes. So I just wanted to, I don't know when I could say it, but I just wanted to say that publicly, and I'm sure she'll hear about it, and that's great.
I don't know which way to vote here at all right? I have some concern because, let me say this personally. I have my own beach. It's a private beach. It won't be shut down. I don't go to the beach anyway, but anyway.
Can I come over?
No, we don't allow any guests, so, you know, that's how we're protecting ourselves. And I have certain recreational facilities that are open to me. But there's a vast number of people in Bonita Springs that do not have those choices. And we're facing, you know, a 93-degree, you know, heat wave that's going to continue through the thing. So I'm not sure, I don't know what we're doing here, you know. I kind of feel that way about shutting down parks and all that other stuff, because it's fine for us who can do whatever we have so many choices, and we can be safe. We can wear our mask. We don't have to interact with anybody, and we do it. So I have a problem, but I don't know, I understand the concern, because in some ways, that's all we hear about. Nothing else is happening in the world except COVID-19.
Well, correct. Cases are going up, but
Right.
we're doing more testing. But hospitalization is not going up. ICU units are not being occupied. And we're having more testing and more positive cases when we're finding out mortality rates are far, far, far lower than thought. And actually, the age has jumped, right? Now it's 60 and you're okay. 75 and above is when you have to start really worrying. And you're right, you wear masks, you have options, but other people don't. And you know what? There is also common sense. Fresh air, it does kill this virus, okay? It has been shown. I mean, even when I was growing up, we would open the windows in the winter if we were sick to get the, bad air, the germs out of the house. And so the beach is good. Bring your money over. I don't care, spend it here. You don't have to go out to a restaurant during this weekend. But if I want to go out, or if the family in that picture wants to go out, they can go out. They can go to the beach if they can find parking. We're limited in how many people can go to the beach because of the natural barrier of parking. And when there hasn't been any spike in, it's just so ironic that it's okay to protest Black Lives Matter with no mask and go anywhere, but God forbid, 4th of July weekend, you go to the beach without a mask on. Common sense, folks. Don't go if you're not feeling safe. Yes, we have more positive tests because we're testing more. It's that simple. There's not, it actually supports the evidence that it isn't as deadly as we believed. We know that for sure. It is now believed to be a bad cold, just like a bad flu season. In the end, it'll be the same amount of numbers, I suspect, when they adjust for all the numbers, and probably 65,000 people in America will have died of COVID, and mostly above the age of 60. And in some ways, that's good news because it doesn't hit little kids, whereas the flu does, right? The flu is, what do they call it, a W, and the COVID is a J. It just hits people as they get older and more immune deficiency. So I don't know why we would even want to ask the commissioners to request from the governor. I say the reverse. Ask the governor to let us free. Open everything and let the motors start running and let the economy start. Let us be brave. Let Bonita be brave.
Thank you, Laura. Amy?
Well, in fact, we did. I voted against the fireworks because, we could be facing thousands of people coming to our fireworks down in Old Fort by the band shell. But our staff did a remarkable job in having a drive. I reversed. If I had known that was the choice, but at the time we did that, we voted to have the fireworks, and they were supposed to be down in the band shell. So this, let's try to be consistent, But I think it is different at the beach because if we have enough people there, I think we can get people to act responsibly. But I could be wrong. But I understand why people are asking for these restrictions. I called my daughter. My daughter lives in New York City, and they have a mandatory mask ordinance there. And I said, well, do they enforce it? And they said, well, no, they're not giving out any tickets and they're not giving any fines, but there are groups of people that go around telling people you don't have your mask on, and they are distributing masks. And she thought that there was a large number of people that are using masks in New York City because they have so many public service agents that go around and tell people to behave that way. But so even though they have a mandatory rule there, they don't enforce it. And that's why, some of these things are difficult. So we could close down the beach completely. We'll just close off all the entrances, and I think that's possible. But we're going to be using our police force to do that.
Thank you, Amy. Fred, and then Chris.
Yeah, I think I would be in favor of leaving the beaches open if we were in the situation that Collier closed theirs way down and then said, come up to Lee. You got the East Coast, they're shut down over there. So we're going to get a lot of people in here that wouldn't normally be here over 4th of July weekend. And I don't think that's a good thing. I'm not in favor of closing the economy down at all. And it's going to hit the fan when we get into the season because these restaurants that are mandated to be 50% or less, in the season, they always are, even just an average restaurant. They're full, and they got a waiting list of people out front. And that's when they make their money. So if they have to go to stay 50%, it's not going to be good. I think this is not something we're saying do all the time. It's only this weekend because the other beaches are closed. It'd be like if all the other parks around were closed, our parks would be inundated. Fortunately, they're not, so.
Thanks, Fred. Chris, and then Jesse.
Okay, well, for one thing, I received a report this morning that with respect to hospitalizations, there are no empty COVID-19 beds in any St. Petersburg hospitals. Patients in St. Petersburg are now being transferred to Orlando. Tampa is about out of ICU beds for COVID-19. The problem is that what's happening is yesterday, I don't know, I didn't get the report today, but yesterday we had 6,000 new cases in Florida. And while, you may not think hospitalizations are going up and the death rate is staying close to same, what you're creating are carriers. We've seen that today in preparing for this council meeting. We had carriers that met with our employees at an outside location. Those employees came into our building. So it seems ironic to me that we have closed this meeting to the public and we're sitting here and we're debating about whether or not we ought to send a resolution to the county commissioners about trying to close the beaches for a few hours each day in order to limit the number of carriers that are going to come over from the East Coast and from Collier County. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Now, I read and I saw the film clip on NBC2 of what Penny Taylor said. She made a throw-in comment about, well, they can go to Lee County, but so what? That wasn't,
She said, it's not that far.
well, you think people, excuse me, Jesse, I had the floor. Do you really think that people on the east coast of Florida are going to somehow find NBC2 News and make a decision about coming to Lee County based upon what Penny Taylor says? I don't think so. So I'm, for Roger DeJarlais to set up in Lee County and to say, well, he's never called out a public official in 40 years, but he calls her out on, it's just ridiculous. So, either we care about the spike in COVID cases, we care about the people that are vulnerable in our community with comorbid conditions. Young people are finding out they're not immune from this stuff either. If they have, I know transplant cases under the age of 30 that are hiding at home because they can't be out in public. I know diabetes cases. I know heart surgery patients that are under the age of 30 that can't be out. Babies are actually having deaths now from COVID. So, it's up to council. I raise it as an issue. I would be all for sending a letter, but, you guys can vote on it if you wish.
Thank you. We intend to here shortly. Jesse?
Yes, I'd like to reply, number one, to Commissioner Taylor again. You completely missed the point, Chris. You completely missed the point. It had nothing to do with the fact that I thought people are going to watch NBC2 locally in Southwest Florida over Miami. It had to do with that type of lack of care for your neighbor. And when you're an elected official, it's highly inappropriate to try to seize another entire coast on us because we don't politically agree with their decision. That's garbage. It's not appropriate, and I stand by it. Additionally, I spoke to Commissioner Hammond for quite some time yesterday about this entire thing. He's been in contact with Florida Department of Health every day, contract tracing for every positive case in Lee County. The vast majority of those have been traced to spaces such as house parties, gated community gatherings. The Department of Health official had zero recollection of any random transmittal at a beach in Lee County. That's Lee County. So, we can sit here and we can go on the news cycle if we want to, but the reality is, look, it's going to make politicians look great to close the beach, sure, because we care, but it's going to have zero effect on stopping the virus. So for me to simply do something as a, hey, I'm going to pat myself on the back and think I'm making a difference, I completely disagree. So I'm ready to vote.
Is there, Amy?
No, I thought somebody else.
Oh, Mike? Okay, so, yes, Arlene.
Sorry, you do have a member of the public, Mr. Esmond, who wanted to comment during the original public comment, but was driving home.
Okay.
He is on hold.
Is he online? Yes.
He's online.
Dwight, please.
Addison and Kyle.
Dwight, you have the floor, if you can hear me.
Hello?
Dwight, are you there?
Am I on?
You are.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Dwight.
All right. Well, I personally believe that you ought to follow the same rules as the Collier County. But you all saw my email, and am Can you hear me? Because my wife just said she could not.
Yes.
There's a delay.
Okay. You all saw my email. I just want to reiterate those 3 questions. You need to know the value of the land and building as it...
Now, Dwight, we're talking right now about the beaches. So we figured we would let you talk about the beaches, or I guess maybe the way talk about any old thing you want. Yeah,
Well,
okay.
Mayor,
Initial public
he didn't have the opportunity
Okay.
to call and
All right.
he was driving.
All right. We're talking about the beaches, Dwight, but we'd love to hear your comments about anything at all, so thank you.
I will be more than happy to wait on the comments.
No, please, go ahead. I apologize. My mistake, Dwight, please. I thought you were talking about the beaches. My mistake.
Thank you, Mayor. I do believe you ought to restrict hours. Current value of the building and land, at least before COVID-19, what's going to be the value after the renovation, because you shouldn't throw good money after bad. I don't know if you can figure out how long that building would be usable, but if you can, then it would at least let me feel like we're spending money wisely. 3 questions. If they can be answered tonight, that's great. If they can't, we need to postpone. I also want to throw out a comment. You have a guy running for mayor that knows land values, that knows building values. Why don't you ask Omer what he thinks about this process? Finally, and because I'm not going to read the whole thing, finally, move the meetings back to the church. That worked just fine. I appreciate the ability to call in and talk. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you, Dwight.
Thank you.
Okay, Arlene, are there other members
No, nothing.
looking to speak? Okay. So there's been a motion by Chris to send a letter to the commissioners urging them to close the beaches. Fred, you seconded that, correct? Yeah. Okay, is there further discussion on this point, council?
Does that include closing our access points?
Oh, correct. For the record, Councilmember Corey's green sheet also included the city's 2 beach parks.
Okay.
And, okay, clarifying question with that. If we're doing the same thing as Collier, they have beach passes, which again, I'm gonna talk about during my member comments. But right, but if they're expecting us to do the same thing, we can't possibly do the same thing. So, I mean, I just wanna point that out before we vote on it. We can't do what Collier's doing because we don't have those passes. So to say we're following the Collier model is an inaccurate portrayal of how we're gonna do this. So we need to say it how it is, and it isn't the Collier model because we can't do what Collier's doing, so.
And Chris, just so there's no confusion, can you go ahead and repeat your motion, please?
I'll make a motion that we ask the Lee County to follow the same rules as Collier County. And as far, if we ask him to be only open for certain hours during the day like Collier County, I don't have a problem with keeping the parking open. You know, if people want to come to the beach and park their car, and that's fine, as long as they observe the same hours. What I'm interested in is having the hours on the beach limited much the same as Collier is.
Okay.
Because if they're limited the same, people in Collier, people on the East Coast know there's no advantage of coming to Lee County. They'll just simply go to the Collier beaches if they can find parking.
Okay. And Fred, you'll second that as stated?
Yeah, I'll second it. I would like to point out, though, that only covers that beach down by docks, and all the rest of the beach is under the control of the state.
No, that's not exactly right, Fred.
Not quite correct, but-
I've been with I've been with Lee County DEP and state DEP. That whole Bonita Beach is controlled by the county.
Yep, that's true. That's accurate.
Okay. So we have a motion on the floor and we have a second. Council, is there further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mayor Simmons,
No.
Councilmember Corey,
Yes.
Councilmember Gibson,
No.
Councilmember Forbes,
Aye.
Councilmember Carumba,
No.
Councilmember Purdon,
No.
Councilmember Carr.
No.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. We're going to move on to the next addendum, which is a discussion regarding possibly canceling a city council meeting this summer. Councilwoman Laura Carr, green sheet number 20-07177. Laura.
Yes. Well, I heard on the news that Fort Myers Beach does it annually in August, and we're in such turmoil and so much angst. I asked Derek if there's any possibility fitting with charter rules and regulations, could we do it? So, Mr. Attorney.
Yes, our charter, section 24 of our charter requires us to have at least one meeting per month. So a lot of local governments take off a whole month in the summertime. If we were to do that, the only way we could do that and comply with our charter would be to cancel, say, the last meeting in one month and the first meeting in the next month. That would give us the equivalent of a month off for staff and for the council and for people to either get work done or to go on vacation.
And to pack up. Right.
But what I will say is, right now, the thing that I am most concerned about going forward with the summer agenda is we have several large land use items the public is waiting on, some of our neighboring communities are waiting on, as well as the various petitioners. We have, and I'm just going to give you the tentative schedule right now. We will have the first reading of the Raptor Bay rezoning in July. We will have the transmittal of the Weeks Fish Camp sometime in August. We will have the Bonita Grand Drive Master Plan Multi-Use Plan Development on August 4th, and we'll have the Barefoot Beach Hotel Project on July 15th and a final reading on August 5th. So early August, late July, a lot of items that are sort of people are anticipating. Late July or late August is still very tentative at this point. I just want to give you the lay of the land.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, Chris.
When do we wrap up the budget?
So we have a July 27th all-day budget meeting, and then the final budget hearings are in September.
Jesse?
I don't feel 2 meetings a month is adequate to even deal with the things that we have at our on our plate, to be honest. So I'm opposed to it. I mean, I'm here. I look at this a little bit different. I mean, I come to City Hall 5 days a week for a reason. I'm always focused on this stuff. I talk to Arlene and Derek probably more than they like, but for me to do 1 month, one meeting a month, no. We have too many things coming up. Like we haven't even looked at what the Bamboo property potentially could even be, and that's the biggest thing that we have in the entire city. And there's so many other little things that we haven't even gotten to even close to. COVID has already pushed us time-wise probably farther behind than we'd like to be. I think even one meeting, not to sound like the nerd who always wants to go to school, I think even one meeting pushes us back, and for me, I don't believe in taking plays off, and I think that's a playoff. So I'm adamantly opposed to that.
Okay. Amy? Yes, please.
No, I would rather have lighter agendas that we could discuss thoroughly some of these really important things that are coming before us, rather than having to discuss things and be the pressure of being here for 8 hours a day, and having to have, I'm not in favor of that. If we want to try to schedule these things that are coming forward so that we bunch them in a certain way, so that possibly later on, if we don't have a light agenda, we could just take a day off. But I don't think we've ever taken it. Have we ever taken a day off? I don't remember since 2016 that I've been on that we've gone on vacation. And I agree with you totally. There's just even things that we're not even talking about.
I wouldn't want any land use projects to stall, but we could be more efficient, perhaps.
I was hoping that we could have a retreat, like one of those meetings could be a retreat. It might be a little different. Maybe we couldn't be voting on things. So I would like to reserve those dates. And I don't know what Arlene has in mind for a retreat, or whether she's thinking is an add-on. I don't know what's going to happen with our budget. I mean, honestly, just the point that Chris brought up about the budget, the CIP, we could spend a whole day talking about those kinds of things, and reiterating the things that we want to maintain there. So I don't think we should do that.
And it's come up in the past before, but it's usually, I know you go away, I go away, and it never all lines up. So we've always just said, we'll have all the meetings, and if we can't make one, then we call in if we can.
Call in, right.
Just because it's too hard for all of us to line up our vacations or whatever we want to do to have it all done in that same 1 or 2 week time. So I think the normal schedule is the way to go, but just, if we need to take time off or go somewhere, do something, we do it.
Okay, Fred, anything? No? Okay. So Laura?
Okay, we can just drop it.
And well, okay, thank you, Laura. And just so everybody knows, and I've told staff this next meeting, I won't be here and very doubtful on the phone, so.
Where are you going?
If you know where I'll be that day, in your beloved home state, we will be on the campus of Princeton University, having a virtual football tour.
Oh, how neat, how cool.
And it's in the morning, so it's like, I love you guys, but,
You're gonna love
I'm gonna, yeah, we gotta get something to take care of.
That'll big boy.
So, you'll be in charge, Deputy Mayor, if that's okay?
Yep.
All right, dynamite. So, thank you for bringing that up. It's always a good discussion to have. So do we want to keep going along here, or do we want to go back now to, our presentations?
If you'd like, Mayor, why don't we complete the mayor and council member items, and then we'll go back to the presentations.
Okay, so we've got one more item here. Approve a resolution appointing Juergen J. Welch as chairman of the Historical Preservation Board, and this is Councilwoman Laura Carr, green sheet number 20-07170. Laura.
Yes. Jay has graciously agreed to be the chair of our historic preservation. There are some objections been raised by a former, I guess, or a member resigned, I believe. I'm not sure how that was left with Alan, but he's upset that Jay doesn't live in the city of Bonita Springs and shouldn't be therefore chairperson. And there are precedents that Dallas did not live in Bonita Springs. He was chair for, 10 years? The chairperson of art and public places, Bonita Springs resident? I don't know. I don't know why. I mean, Jay is just doing this out of good, he's really sees vision and hope for historic village, I keep pointing out no money, but he has hope, and he's willing to be there and do it. I don't know. I have a hard time getting people to volunteer to do. I'm trying to recruit someone for Amy.
Amy and then Mike.
Okay. I just want to say, when we got the emails, I did discuss this with Arlene, and I think she could speak, but she did. I asked her what the process was and whether there was any criterion that said you could only be chairperson if you were a resident, and we do not have that process at all. There's no restriction, and we have people that are participating in our boards that are residents in Bonita and non-residents of Bonita. So I'm totally comfortable with this suggestion here, but I was going to say, if there was any problem here, this is one of the things that we could discuss in our retreat and say, do we want to put in some criterion or some process where we only want Bonita residents? Right now, I don't think that would be a good idea, but that would be something that the council could set as a policy, but it's certainly not our policy. So we've been following them, and there's plenty of boards. Even the Veterans Board is by a non-resident whose name I won't mention. We don't want to change him. So, and I think it's fine. So I'm glad you brought it forward, and I think we need to talk about it because it was brought up, and I just was curious of what our policy had been, and I agree that there's no policy that says it can't be done, and in the past, certainly, we've had people outside of Bonita that serve as chairman because of their special experience, so.
And before I call on you, Mike, is Alan still a member of the committee, or did he resign?
At the meeting, he stated he was resigning, except that we could call him if needed for quorum, but that is not a possibility legally. You are resigned. So as far as our staff attorney, Carly, provided him with an email that was copied to the liaison, Councilmember Carr, accepting his resignation with some paperwork that has to be filled out as well.
So he has resigned?
That's what we
If
understand.
if he hasn't, and it was meant in jest or something, hopefully he'll respond, because he has some required paperwork has to be filed with the state. So that's how we followed up with him to
He
confirm.
stated in the meeting he was resigning.
Okay. And paperwork has been drawn up for his
Paperwork has
resignation.
been drawn and sent to him with copy to the liaison, Councilmember Carr.
And many at the meeting asked him to reconsider. And that we complimented him. And he's a terrific member, but he just,
He resigned. Okay, thank you, Laura. Mike, and then Fred.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, so there was a discussion at the board on who was going to become chair, and they kind of voted to have.
nobody wanted it. I just strike a deal.
It's how it goes a lot of times. So, but I mean, there was a discussion at the board to where if somebody else wanted to be it, they could have stepped forward, and, you know, so Jay basically presented himself to do it, and,
We pleaded with.
yeah. Okay. But I mean, there wasn't, like, the whole board wasn't against it, is what I'm asking, so,
No.
yeah.
And actually, at the meeting, Alan wasn't objecting. It was only afterwards that he then said he
Yeah,
felt that.
because I know on like the bicycle pedestrian board, when the chair changed, you know, she moved out of the area, they elected amongst themselves the replacement, and then, you know, it got ratified by us, but, so that's just what I wanted to make sure, because I think that's a fair way to do it, is, you know, that they select among themselves who wants to do it, so.
Well, they did that, and then she didn't show up for a month saying, I didn't want it. So it was then negotiated with Jay. So really,
Okay, thank you. Fred?
Yeah, has nothing to do with this, but it relates to it. How many vacancies do we have on that committee, board?
a lot.
You currently have 2 right now. The vice chair resigned for some personal reasons, and then Dallas Rivard resigned,
So we're making progress on getting applications to fill them?
Yes, we post that as well, and we recently, a few meetings ago, had done some additional outreach for all the committees, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay.
What about, have we talked to Colum he lives off of Paradise, in the back behind the Y. He used to be Charlie Strader, yeah. I mean, those guys you know, if we called them up from reserves and said that we don't have people, I think both those guys might consider it. They know everything about Bonita, maybe.
Dust them off?
Dust them off, see if they'll come back. The boys need you. See if they'll come back. Strader and, I mean, we can reach
Dust it
out to
off
them.
once, you see what happened.
Yeah.
But I think that, right, I mean, so you know, and I don't know if you make personal pleas, but to these folks that really do have a working knowledge.
I could reach out to, if you give me the contact info, or if it's your committee, I mean, I don't want to
No,
overstep
do.
either,
I
but
don't know them.
I think they're both, I don't know if you know Cullum Hastings, Cullum's Trail is actually Cullum's, right? And then, Strader just knows, I mean, he could go,
Shirley, yeah.
right, backwards with his eyes closed, could tell us the history of Bonita from the beginning to the end. So those are guys I would love to reach out to. The deal with Alan, I spoke to him as soon as he emailed us, and I was not appreciative of the tone because it insinuated that I had been neglectful to his issues. Well, first of all, it happened on Friday. Second of all, as I stated to him, I didn't have a text from him. I didn't have a personal email from him. I didn't have a city email from him. So his email saying that we were ignoring him and everything along those lines was highly inappropriate, coming to me because the only thing that I've ever met him from was saving the water tower. So the only time he's ever come to me, I helped him. So what happened this weekend, I didn't understand. And then I started to think maybe I'm getting dragged into something that maybe I should not be getting dragged into. And I think that it's important that it is a Bonita resident, but I don't think we go against this guy right now. Everything I've heard of, I've never met him. The guy but apparently he's the bee's knees, and I'm not going to argue against it.
Or
No, the new guy.
Jay?
Jay,
He's not
yeah.
new, he's been on.
Well, no, the guy who's going to be the president from the new president, right? That
Very
Alan's upset about.
talented architect.
Right. So, I mean, in the outreach committee, the only thing that I had to go on the outreach committee, you can only be an ex officio member. If you live outside of Bonita Springs, you have to be an ex officio member. You could only be a member if you live in the city. So in my head, when I got the email from Alan, I'm like, this is so out of whack with what I know. But then as soon as I talked to Arlene and I realized only 5 have to be in the city, 2 do not have to be, and the way in which he ended up taking leadership within the committee, I then told Arlene, okay, I'm a little more comfortable with that scenario. So, sorry for getting drug into it, I guess. And I'm going to trust that he's the right person for the job. And if the rest of the council feels that way, I'm inclined to be that way as well.
Well, and that's why I just wanted to make sure that Alan had resigned. I mean,
That's what, he has said to me that he didn't, he only resigned, is what he said to me, was that he only resigned because of the green sheet. He said.
We didn't have the green sheet by then.
He said, I said I would stay on to keep a quorum, like Arlene said, which you can't just stay on the committee to keep the quorum, but then something about Welch, whoever that is, leaves town every summer, so I don't know what that means. So see, I feel like I'm getting dragged in. Exactly, my point. That's,
yeah.
right, so.
So Laura, you're gonna make a motion that we accept Jay's as chairman, and is there a second to that?
Second.
There's been a second. Council, is there further discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Carr says yes.
We know our
Councilmember
numbers.
Corey.
Aye.
Councilmember Gibson.
Aye.
Councilmember Forbes.
Aye.
Councilmember Carumba.
Aye.
Councilmember Purdon.
Aye.
Councilmember Carr.
Aye.
Mayor Simmons.
Aye.
Okay.
Okay, so now, Arlene, are we ready for the presentations?
Yes. Kyle,
Okay.
Kyle and Addison, are you prepared for the first presentation? And I'm going to call Matt real quick to have him on the phone as well. And I believe we have Tim Hancock.
Good thing you're not in charge of this, Rooney. I'd be saying a few things.
So we're back to green sheet 2007173?
Correct.
Yes, Laura, I think we're gonna try to get the stormwater utility fee presentation queued up.
Okay, I'm going to put
Hi,
you,
Arlene. We are ready for the first presentation, yes.
I've got you on. All right, I'm just,
And Kyle, if this is Tim Hancock, for the record. Kyle, if you could allow me to share screen, please.
Could you ask them to?
And then we'll turn the volume up a little bit, yes.
All righty? You're all set.
Okay, turn the volume up, and I think we're ready to go, please.
All right, Mr. Mayor, can you hear me just fine?
Marginal, but
Where's the?
Okay, let me see if
Kyle,
I can do a little better job, and more importantly, can you see my screen?
Yes, Tim.
yes.
Okay, terrific. This is Tim Hancock. I'm a principal with Stantec, and also on the phone with me are two other members of our team, Molly Williams, our senior stormwater engineer and stormwater practice lead, as well as,
I hear.
I'm sorry?
go ahead.
As well as
You
Dave.
have the floor, and we're not allowing any interruption, so it's all you, please. Council will hold their questions till the end.
Okay, David Hyder as well. He's our senior principal with our financial group. And fortunately for everyone, I have a short and sweet presentation for you this evening. There's only two items to cover. The first is the credits themselves and how they're proposed in the credit manual. And the second is an overview of how the credits are applied to the application process. So let's jump into the stormwater fee credits. As part of our presentations on the stormwater utility, the council asked that we develop a credit manual to recognize parcels and communities that have managed stormwater systems. And so the manual that we have provided for you does just that. The purpose of the manual is to provide ongoing reductions in stormwater fees to qualifying properties for the existence, maintenance, and upkeep of their stormwater systems. Additionally, any communities that have water quality management programs can also qualify for additional credit, and we'll describe that in a little more detail in a few slides. We've tried to keep it fairly simple. So what you'll see here are there are basically four areas of possible stormwater credit. The first is for what I'll call a traditional design. Historically, once we had stormwater requirements, you were designing to a 25-year design storm. If you're a little older community, but you do have a stormwater permit, you're probably designed to this level, and you would qualify under what we're calling level 1. If you, however, have a permitted pond or system for a stormwater event exceeding the 25-year design storm, you would be level 2, and you'll get a slightly higher credit. The third one is the stormwater management system direct discharge. If you are discharging directly outside of the city stormwater system, that has a specific credit. And then regardless of those three, if you also have a water quality management program that basically tracks basically how your system is operating, and you discharge into impaired water bodies such as the Imperial River or Spring Creek watersheds, that also carries a credit with it as well. So what does that all mean? Well, that level one, your base stormwater system, and let's remember that in the state of Florida, the way we used to handle stormwater was create a ditch and get it off the property. And older parts of the community may very well have these areas, and I apologize, my computer says it's going to kick into a restart, so bear with me and I'll try and shut that down. But nonetheless, I'm sorry, if you can see that on my screen, I'm having a hard time getting rid of it. There we go. I've got only about a minute. So level one, you're going to get a 25% reduction in your operating cost. Level two, 50%. Molly, this thing is going to kick off. I'm going to ask you to take the presentation from here since I have no way of shutting that down. Are you able to do that?
I can. It seemed like you had 59 minutes.
Okay. All right. It's 59 minutes. I can slow down a little bit.
Maybe just enough time to cover it. You'll be okay.
I'm still talking at 58 minutes. You should have shut me down a long time ago. But the level two, again, that one that has a little more than a 25-year allowance, they would be eligible for up to 50% of a credit towards operating costs. And if you have a direct discharge, meaning you do not discharge into the city system, you also would be eligible for a 50% credit toward operating costs. The next level, that fourth level, if you will, is if you are a system where you have a means of basically addressing the numeric nutrient requirements, you have a water quality management program and are discharging into an impaired water body, if you meet or exceed those requirements, you would be eligible for up to 100% reduction in the operating costs. So what does 100% credit or 50% credit or 25% credit mean? Again, this is a recognition that your on-site or off-site system reduces the city's stormwater expenditures. So you should expect to get an offset in your stormwater fee. So the way it works is, you may recall, you have basically two buckets where your fees that are collected and what they're collected for. The first is your operating costs. These are things such as routine maintenance, regulatory requirements, and so forth. Your annual budget for that is $883,000, and for each equivalent residential unit, that's approximately $26 a year. Okay, so those are your operating costs. So when we go back and say you're eligible for a 25% credit or a 50% credit or a 100% credit, this is the bucket that would apply to. The second bucket are your capital improvements. These are bioreactors, water quality projects, flood reduction projects. These are the ones that really apply citywide. They benefit all residents of the city across the board. And we only need to look at the media that occurred during the blue-green algae to see how poor water quality can, in a heartbeat, really impact the economic engine of the city. So you have a budget item of $800,000 for your capital improvements. And again, none of that is eligible for the credits we're discussing, and the portion of that per ERU annually is $24. So the maximum credit you could receive would be 100% of the operating portion. That's what we're going to call here bucket A, the $26. And if you effectively manage your entire local system, including a water quality management program, you would not have to pay that fee. How do we implement this? It's through a mitigation credit application. And I want to be clear on the front end. The application, once approved, is good for a window of 5 years. So when you file your application, the application will require that you have a site survey or site plan. This is not something you have to run out and create. If you have already got a stormwater system, when you applied for it, you were required to provide a site plan as a part of your permit set, so that already exists. You must have a statement by a licensed engineer. Basically, it's just a certification that the system is operating and maintained as required so it can operate in accordance with your permit. You'll need a list of parcels applying for the credit. Again, most property owners associations and HOAs already have a parcel list for the properties within their development. If not, we've spoken with the city and understand the city would be able to help people to point them in the right direction and create these lists. And then, of course, any maintenance records. The application fee is at $300, and again, this is once every 5 years. Also, if you are one of the folks that have the stormwater management system maintenance agreements, you would provide that as well, showing that you have an agreement in place so the system will be maintained over time. If you have a water quality management program, remember, these are the folks that would be eligible for 100% credit because they are discharging into an impaired water body, and that their testing and sampling plan, which they're already required to do, is showing that they're meeting the permit requirements. So you would simply provide that documentation. You would provide your sampling plan, the annual sampling report, and a list of parcels as well. Again, this is also good for 5 years, but you would have to, every 5 years, provide the annual data and sampling report. And again, if you meet or exceed the numeric nutrient criteria and discharge into the Imperial River Basin or the Spring Creek Basin, you would be eligible for this reduction as well. So I know that was fast and furious, but those are the bones of the stormwater credit manual that has been provided to your staff. We want to bring this back to you for your consideration, and our team is available to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Great, thank you very much, and I'll go by district number if that's
But
okay.
Mayor, maybe before that, I just want to add a little bit more to it. Sorry I had stepped out for a brief moment. Part of this credit process, just to set the groundwork for how we got here, at the time that we were looking at the issue, we had several requests from communities. Mr. Cox represented the Bayside and Bay Creek CDDs asking for a credit model. That's where we started the discussion. We said, well, we moved forward with the fee, and then we were developed the credit as we went. It is also tied partially to the litigation that the city is involved in. With respect to what that credit does, is it does not set forth the test that Mr. Cox asked for, which is essentially a dual nexus test. Is there a benefit to that CDD that is being derived from the fee? We have the proposal that's in front of you now deals with only the maintenance portion and does not deal with the capital portion. Obviously, we can continue to have conversations with the CDD about modifying this process. We can also talk about whether we want this to be retroactive for last year, which is something that I know Mr. Cox didn't have an opportunity to discuss, but it was something that was made, a request that was made to the council in the first year of implementation. I just want you to have all that additional background when you're asking your questions. Sorry.
And were there any issues, not service of process, I'm using all the wrong terms, but were there any legal issues or issues with how that unwound?
Well, we have been in abatement. Basically, the lawsuit is not proceeding while both parties try to work this out. Stantec, as soon as I got a final version of this and it was cleared to go, I did send it over to them, but they haven't had an opportunity to look at it further. If Mr. Cox is available today, right now, maybe he can add some additional thoughts, but I don't know that they have made a determination that this is acceptable to them or they would like to have continuing discussions. I think the process that Stantec has laid out, particularly with respect to the maintenance provision, is fair and equitable. With respect to the capital improvements side of the equation, which is the other $24, those are benefits that the entire city, is derived from. And so one of the issues is, and speaking with Mr. Feeney, is that even them having their own system, they drive the results of their system drive the requirement under the NPDES program that the city has to meet. So even if they're their own self-contained system, we still have to do things based on part of what they output, because it sets those BMPs and then the basin management plan, and then we have to respond to that elsewhere in the city. So whether there could be ever 100% credit where there's nothing, I don't know. That's a process we have not explored further. I just want you to have that additional background information with respect to this presentation.
Okay. Amy,
Just
District 1.
I didn't, well, first of all, I thought that when we passed this in the first time, that we said that we were going to develop the system and that the credits would be given retroactively the first year. Did we not agree to that? Or is that still subject to?
That's still subject to something we can implement here. It's not laid out in this manual, but there would be nothing to prevent you from doing that.
Councilmember Corman, you are correct. When we discussed this, we said that we would look at retroactively counting 2 years. So it would be this year and next year, but the credit would happen in the second year.
Right, so you would credit this year's and then give them
next
credit for
year's.
the last year too. I didn't quite follow what you said about the nexus. Would you just repeat that again?
Sure. Anytime we do an assessment or charge a fee that's based on development or a proposed impact, there has to be a nexus between the regulation and the property, and that has to be roughly proportionate. So in this case, the issue would be, is the CDD and the property owners within that CDD benefiting in any way from the city's stormwater management program? And if it is, then there's a nexus. Now, the next part of it is it roughly proportionate? Is the amount of money we're charging them proportionate to the impacts they have on the system? Now, if we're not providing anything for maintenance, then they would be credited 100%. If they are still benefiting from the capital improvements, the bigger system work that the city is doing, then there would still be that fee that they would be required to pay.
So they weren't satisfied somehow that?
They had asked for a very basic test where they could basically present the credit program that they would like under that test scenario. We have set up a program that has standards.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Amy. Jesse, District 2.
My issue is it's a fundamental and macro issue with the credits. It's a regressive tax that disproportionately hits District 2 and 5. I mean, the idea that someone on the 10th floor of the colony gets a $25 tax break, but folks who live in Rosemary in a 900 square foot home are going to pay twice as much. Like, to me, that's dereliction of duty. Those are the people who put me in this chair. I can't, with a good conscience, vote for something that does that to them. Like, it's 50 across the border, it's 25 across the border. It's not here, as far as I'm concerned. I was against it to begin with. I understand that ship has sailed. That fight was already lost, but my issue, one of my major issues with it was just simply the credits. Once again, I was around my district 2.5 times. You know, $50 is a big deal to people. And the people, you know, I feel as if this is something that I just, with a good conscience, I can't vote for it. I understand I'll probably be outvoted, but the people who put me in those chairs are going to pay twice as much as the people who put you guys in your chairs, and I can't do it. So, thanks.
Thank you, Jesse. Laura, District 3.
No, I mean, I think that sounds like a pretty fair plan in terms of how to negotiate with folks who have been doing a significant amount of water mitigation on their own and really trying in their communities. But I think that perhaps they're forgetting that then it does empty out into the Imperial River or Spring Creek, so that there are consequences. So I would hope that the suit would be one that would be dropped and everybody would say, yeah, we're doing a part and you're giving us credit, but we realize we're also contributing to where we can't just, you know, we want to contribute more to that, so.
Okay.
Mayor, we did get an email public comment. If everyone could just kind of speak a little bit closer to their microphones. I got a public comment from Mr. Hershenson asking we could speak closer in our microphone.
Sure.
All of us?
Well, Councilmember Carr.
Okay.
Okay.
But if everyone.
Laura, did you have or want to? Are you good for now?
I'm good, no,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. There is water. Chris?
Yeah, I think this is a fair approach. People in my district on the eastern side view this as a critical program to fund what needs to happen with respect to stormwater mitigation. I think people on the eastern side of my district, Bonita Bay, recognize that we're part of a bigger community, that we're part of Bonita Springs, and that the value of all properties are improved if we can control stormwater and treated in such a way that we no longer imperil the Imperial River and Spring Creek and Oak Creek. So my district is in favor of the stormwater utility, and I don't think there's anything here in this plan with respect to the credits that would be objectionable to people in my district. We just want to make sure that the stormwater utility fee stays in place.
Okay, Mike?
No, initially I had the same feelings as Jesse. I think if anybody has to pay it, everybody should have to pay the full amount and not get the credits. But so there was a lawsuit.
There
Derek?
is a lawsuit. It's
There
still
is
currently pending, and I believe we have Mr. Cox still on the phone. Maybe he could give a little more information. At this time, I just don't know that his client has had enough time to process what we've sent them.
Yeah.
And just to be clear, Derek, for everybody that's listening, what is the lawsuit about?
The lawsuit is challenging our ability to impose a stormwater utility fee on the CDD. Because of the basis that they take care of stormwater themselves, they don't dump into our system, they don't receive from our system, and they discharge into state waters.
Okay, Mike?
And
I would
so talking with Matt, got to understand it a little more. And even if they do get the credits, it is beneficial for the city, because in order to get the credits, they have to do testing and show that they're cleaning the water before it goes out. So overall, it does help us because it shows that the water's better going into either the river or the creek, and that means that we have to do less projects in the rest of the city in order to get the numbers down. So it is beneficial for us if they're doing their part and get the credit. So initially I wasn't on board with doing the credit. I thought everybody should pay for the same amount, but if it does help out in the long run, then I guess and abate another lawsuit, I guess it's probably a good idea to go with it.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Fred?
Yeah, my understanding is the same as Mike's, and number one, I think we should retroactively give the credit, but I do think that it's going to be interesting when a lot of these HOAs that want the credits, we get to getting into how good they're cleaning the water, and I think they are going to be in for a rude awakening. That's my information.
Okay, I'm just going to make a few comments and then we'll hear.
Then you hear from Matt.
Okay, I haven't been, as I think you know, when I was in a minority, been in favor of this water tax ever. Now we have a lawsuit to kind of back up that thought, thinking it's unjust and unfair. And I think, and this is Chris, there's no opportunity for you and I to talk about what's going on in our neighborhood. So this is our forum, and on my daily morning walks, I have brought it to the attention of some of the board members. I've left you out just to trying to avoid sunshine law, but Larry Kellum and some others. We have a hefty stormwater fee and a system in place in Bonita Bay. Yet every day I'm walking by blue-green algae that's emptying into the Imperial River. And seem to be, and hopefully I'm wrong, but seem to be getting a little bit of attitude from the Bonita Bay Community Association because I brought it up. So I look forward to working through all these issues, getting water clean, but not putting it on the backs of our taxpayers that have already paid this tax. Their money goes to Tallahassee, their money goes to Washington, and then we have to beg to get it back. Well, rather than beg to get it back, why don't we do as we're continuing to do, either put it in our budget, get some grants, get the state money, get the federal money, but don't impose another tax on people that's going to bring on lawsuits and, quite frankly, not solve the problem as I witness every day in my own neighborhood. So I want to hear from the gentleman that's on the phone.
You have the gentleman, you also have, if you need any additional information from Matt, he's available too.
Okay, so please, we'd like to hear from who's ever on the phone.
First, Matt, did you put you on speaker loud, and hopefully we can.
Oh, hang on. Let me turn this off. Go ahead, Arlene.
Yes, go ahead.
I was just going to point out, I know Derek was talking about projects that would benefit or that would be in the watershed of the community that's filed the lawsuit. Probably the biggest one we have planned right now is Spring Creek Restoration, which is or Spring Creek, Bonita Springs Golf Course Flood Improvement Project. It's the $9 million project that we're looking at the headwaters of Spring Creek, so it would be east of that community. But that's the largest capital improvement project right now that we have that would be in that watershed.
Thank you. And then you also have Mr. Cox on hold as well.
Okay, Mr. Cox, we'd love to hear from you now if you're ready to go.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and I certainly am. A little bit of disagreement with your counsel.
If you could please speak up a little bit, Mr. Cox. Thank you.
Yes? I am here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, no, yeah, go ahead. Just a little bit louder if you can. If not, we'll get through it.
I will certainly give you as much volume as I can.
Okay, thank you.
I had a little bit of disagreement with your counsel. What he did describe was a dual rational nexus test that applies to impact fees. What you have adopted is a special assessment. It has a slightly different test. The first test is, does the project being funded by the assessment provide special benefit to the property that has the duty to pay the assessment? All right. The Supreme Court has recognized 5 areas of special benefit: increased value, increased marketability, increased use, increased fire protection, and increased enjoyment. All right. Now, you're funding projects that in no way affect the properties within the CDD's ability to drain in accordance with their permit. They have already received all of the special benefit that is available to that property from the improvements that they are paying annual special assessments that exceed even the amount that what you're charging for your special assessment to maintain that system. If you don't provide that special benefit, your assessment fails. And that's the crux of our argument before the court, is there is no special benefit to the districts because they have their system in place. They're not reliant on your system. They're not discharging into your system. Zero special benefit is zero special assessment. There's no option yet in your credit program for a property to show that they're receiving no special assessment. Doesn't matter all of this other stuff that's been said about, beneficial for the city. It's got to specially benefit that property. It does not. Unless there's an appeal process that recognizes that, you've still got a defective ordinance. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your comments, sir. Thank you very much. Is there anybody else, Arlene, or?
That's all we have on.
That's it. Okay. So, counsel, what's your pleasure?
Derek, could you just summarize what he said? I didn't quite follow everything.
I think that the short
He was laying out his law case, right? But I didn't follow.
Yes, but essentially his argument is that the CDD does not receive any, or the residents in the CDD do not receive any special benefit from the assessment. So when those of you are either live in CDDs or are subject to MSBU's previously, understand the benefit that you're receiving. You're charging for fire, and the fire district comes out and provides services to you. His argument is that our system does not benefit them, and therefore the ordinance is defective. We could, and we have discussed in the past, we could implement a second appeal system outside of the mitigation credit that's provided in the manual and say, and it would be on them to say that they're not receiving a benefit, and we would then respond and say whether they are not. It essentially would be duplicating what we're doing going to be doing in the courts, but doing it at a local level and hopefully cheaper for both parties. So I have raised that issue in the past. I have no objection to setting up that process, but it is a process that will be far more nebulous in the findings that you will have to make, because we'll be arguing basically legal issues and factual issues before the council on whether or not to give those credits, rather than having a set of guidelines laid out in front of you as you do right now.
Because we're going to quantify it. From my understanding, talking with Matt, that we'll do the testing, and if the water is just being processed so fabulously as it's dumped into, the common areas, well, then they get the full credit. They can prove the numbers but they have to meet the numbers that are given to us by the state, and we have to meet those numbers. So the burden will be on us, and if their water is flowing into an area that the numbers are set, the state says too high, clean it up, well, sorry, you're not, I know you think you're doing a great job, and I think probably Pelican Landing is doing a great job, but within their community, they don't realize how much then goes out. And when you think about I don't know how much money, Pelican Landing pays for their own internal, and Bonita Bay, I don't know what, all those costs.
And apparently, I'm the first one in
To
30
ever
years
see?
to walk by there and say there's a problem all of a sudden. So I don't quite buy that logic either.
Yeah.
But we're working through it.
Yeah, but there is a problem, so.
Very serious problem.
Derek,
Sorry.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Amy and then Jesse.
Irrespective of what happens within a community, would that community also benefit from the other stuff we do around the town?
That would be our position.
Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, so the way I would consider is, imagine the city set up a special assessment process for infrastructures beyond your ad valorem taxation. And we said, basically, we're going to fund improvements to our major spine roads and infrastructure throughout the city. And we're also going to have an element of that will look at local neighborhood controls. And if you live in a gated community that has its own roads and you pay for those roads through assessments, you would say, well, I want to be exempt from the local road. And this is not a perfect analogy, but I want to be exempt from the local roads program because we pay for our own roads, therefore we should be exempt. That's the process that's in the manual in front of you. The argument in very high-level terms that the CDD is making is we should not be paying, we are already paying for roads here, we should not be paying for the major road infrastructure throughout the rest of the city. That benefit is more remote. Now, that argument may have validity. It may not amount to 100%. There may be some benefit still there, but I'm making it in a nutshell on the spot what I would say the differences in the cases are. And so I think there's a possibility of a process to go through and do that analysis. I would certainly rather do that at the local level than leave it up to the courts to make that determination. But I'm looking for direction from you on how to proceed.
Okay, we'll get there. Jesse, Fred, and then Mike. Sorry.
So Derek, if, worst case scenario, what if we lose? Then, and those are not then forced to pay, right? So they don't have to pay. The ones that we're trying to give half off anyways, so they don't have to pay at all. Now the rest of the people who are not in that scenario are still going to get hit with the tax. So there's a hypothetical possibility we could issue a tax that would literally only hit 2 and 5.
The non-gated CDD.
I mean,
The non-gated CDD, yes.
yes, in a theoretical situation.
How can we move
didn't
forward
have
knowing
the-
that?
the-
How can we move forward knowing that?
The idea with the special assessment is that you're trying to be commensurate with your with the burden you're placing on the property with the benefit they're receiving. If we didn't have that, we would do with ad valorem, we would just fund the same projects through ad valorem and they would be taxed and there would be no exception from it. If we lose the lawsuit, I can't tell you that we wouldn't be able to resolve some of the technical deficiencies if there are any found, and then impose the utility in a future year. There's a lot of variables when you go forward with that. And you're asking basically a court to make a rendering a decision on things that are factually and technically based, whether or not there is in fact a benefit or not. There is a legal standard for that, but there's also a factual component of it. And what the CDD is asking for is a process by which they can make the argument that they do not benefit from our fees and therefore should not be charged for them.
Fred, Mike, and then Chris, sorry.
Assuming that their water didn't measure up to the state standards that they're supposed to purify it, then would we not be giving them a benefit? Because things like we're developing now, we could say we'll go over and put a bioreactor on your outfall and reduce that pollutant down to where it meets the level.
It's much more likely that it will not be necessarily project specific to them, but that
But it could be.
it could be, but the impacts of their project will affect the basin management plan and the obligations the city has in total, which would include them as well.
And that costs everybody money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's a theoretical outcome
Yeah.
that we don't have at this.
If we were to take this process that you proposed, is there a way that you can come up with a reasonable appellate process that could go hand in glove with this thing you've proposed?
Yes, I believe so, as an alternative to the mitigation. So there would be a process where you could apply for the mitigation in the manual as presented, and there would be an alternative, which would be a much harder burden and probably not going to be available to as many communities as it would be with Pelican Landing, to go through, come up with the data, support your position, but we would probably have to work out the details of those standards between each other.
Okay, thanks, Derek. Fred, are you good for now? 'Cause we
Yeah,
can certainly come back.
I think personally, if, I'm for moving forward with this, but I think we ought to try and come up with some appeal process that would be part of it. Obviously, if they appeal and they lose in the appeal, they can still sue you anyway. It's because they've exhausted their administrative remedies, what's called. I think it would be fair.
Thanks, Fred. Mike, and then Chris.
Derek, so what you were laying out with adding the extra relief valve for them to get out of it, coming to us and we make that, what if we still decide that they have to pay it and they disagree? Are they still going to, do they still have the right to sue, or is that gone?
They would, but it would be coming to you more akin to the other quasi-judicial items that you see on a regular basis. We would have to lay out the standards under which any appeal would be taken, and then you would have to be acting as judges and making factual findings on whether those standards are met or not.
And are they looking to get relieved of the entire thing, or just the maintenance portion and not the infrastructure side?
I don't know that answer, because the situation that they have had to procedurally address their concerns with us requires them to challenge the ordinance in total, which is not something I think they wanted to do, because I don't think they have an objection to the stormwater fee and program citywide, which is what Mr. Cox testified at the original hearing. But they had to challenge the entirety of the program in order to make their case.
But you don't get to pick and choose fairness.
So if they sue us, they get to sue saying the whole thing should be scrapped.
Right now, if they sue us after an appeal process, they would be challenging that appeal itself.
Well, because like right now with the credit, even if they got the 100% credit, it's 100% of just the maintenance side, so they still have to pay the $24
Right.
instead of the full $50. So it's not like they're getting off the hook completely,
You're
but
getting more than 50% off of what the people in your
yeah,
district, in my district.
I know, and I don't want to curse, but I don't think it's fair, but
Then
but yeah,
don't
we're.
vote for it.
Hey, Chris, you're up.
Yeah, a couple things. I understand the attorney's arguments. The problem his client has is his client is not in control of their stormwater management system within their CDD. Neither is Bonita Bay, which you referenced. The control of those stormwater systems is under the control of Southwest Florida Water Management District. Southwest Florida Water Management District has standards that we have to meet. We also take in water from outside of Bonita Bay. So we're not completely in control of all the water that goes into our stormwater management system. And we're also having water that comes in from the Imperial River and Spring Creek during high tide. So the argument that, gee, we're a completely isolated, we're taking care of our own water, that we're not subject to the stormwater utility fee is ultimately not going to be proven to be a specious argument. I'm sorry you had an attitude problem that you felt you had in Bonita Bay. I understood it was over a natural rookery. I will assure you that that problem's been resolved. And should you have any more concerns, you can bring them forward to the BBCA board. But I would appreciate a little bit less comment on receiving it in public. An attitude. You said you had
Well,
got
that's
an.
exactly what I got, Chris, from the board. And
Well,
I'll
it
be
does,
honest.
you know, if you want to keep it within the family, since you're a resident of Bonita
I am a
Bay,
resident.
you can say it there, but you don't need to bring up and impugn the integrity of the BBCA board based on your being the mayor.
Sure. No, and I invited them if they wanted to have a conversation at city council, because it's awkward because you and I are both on the council. So they didn't want to speak to the council.
No,
So
because they could take care of their own problem. They didn't.
Well, but obviously they're not taking care of their own problems, Chris. And I was by the lake this morning, and there's still blue-green algae there, okay? I mean, there is. I walk by it every day. I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm just telling you, I see it every day. It has not been resolved, although that's the answer that I got, that it was resolved. It's not resolved.
This is not the place.
It is correct. So I'd like to know where you and I can have a conversation on this without breaking the sunshine law, because I'd like to get it solved, and I know you would too. Nobody likes blue-green algae in their neighborhood, but we have it in Bonita Bay.
It's a one lake, one rookery.
And I've got pictures over the past 20 years where there's a lot of lakes and a lot of rookeries and a lot of issues in Bonita Bay.
Well, I will.
It's
for
been
the
quiet
public,
for all these years, and I don't intend for it to be quiet anymore.
all for the public, tell the public, since we're in the public, that you're exactly wrong. And
Okay.
you don't have facts to back it up.
I will send pictures to the council and you make your own decisions. We'll go from there.
Why don't you work through where you live first?
I've tried, Chris. I've
I
tried.
have not heard you at any,
You and I can't talk.
I've never seen,
Is this having to do with what we're talking about here?
no, but he's made an insult, so I'll deal with the insult. Give me 1 minute. I have never seen you at a BBCA board meeting raising an issue.
Correct. I've never seen the blue-green algae until now.
Oh, I thought you
Brought
saw
it
it,
forward, and now we have a problem.
I
Yes,
thought you saw it for 25 years.
yeah, but since I've dug in now, I've got pictures that have come to me. I'll send them to you, Chris. You let me know. Maybe they're bogus pictures. They could be. But I have them now, so I'll send them to you. You take a look.
Fine.
And so I think we're good there. What other, yes, Derek?
I believe we have one more comment from Mr. Cox, and then I would like both Mr. Feeney and Stantec to weigh in if there's anything that was inaccurately stated in our back and forth. Dan, you're up to go. Speak again.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I want to kind of add on to a comment that was made earlier that, we're regulated by the South Florida Water Management District, and that is true. But we are also a partner, a co-permittee under the MPDES permit program with Lee County, as is the city. The MPDES program requires that once there's a determination of an impairment, that you develop the Basin Management Action Plan, I'm repeating myself, BMAP, that identifies contributing properties and identifies the actions that they have to take to address their impacts that are causing the impairment. You're implementing programs without that model, without that roadmap to achieving compliance and eliminating the impairment of the bay. Without that information, without participating in that process, you're subjecting my clients to additional burdens based on imperfect information. Again, I don't want to blow your whole ordinance up. I really want you to come to, let's get together, let's talk, let's refine this. It's a start, it's not the end point. I'd ask you to defer action on this until I can work with Mr. Rooney and with Stantec to develop a model ordinance that will incorporate that data that you're going to have at some point as the BMAP is developed. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, Arlene.
Mayor, Rick Steinmeier would like the opportunity for public comment on this as well.
Okay,
Is he available right now?
Yes.
Okay.
very good. Rick, you have the floor. Welcome.
Hello?
Hello, Rick. Go ahead. We can hear you.
Oh, good. This is quite a challenge to get a public comment into this meeting that was canceled so late. My suggestion is to table this whole ordinance, this whole stormwater ordinance, until you can figure out what's going on. This came up before. I think Mayor Aaron was there at the time, and we could not resolve the difference between gated communities and the general public, and so they dropped the whole issue. And since we've had this storm, it's back again, and it's very complicated, and it's going to cost a fortune to police all these places. I know the storm we had that with the Irma, that was a 150-year storm. So let's hope in our lifetime we'll never have a storm like that again. So I suggest you just drop the whole ordinance, stop throwing good money after bad. So that's my comment. Hope to talk to you later. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Rick. Thanks for calling in. Arlene, are we?
We're good.
Okay. Council, what's your pleasure?
Motion to approve the plan that's set forth under the green sheet.
Okay, there's motion to approve. Is there a second?
Right, could we amend that to put in?
Oh, yeah, we can go back around for comments.
No,
Sure.
I don't want to go back.
The old process?
I want clarification.
Second.
Derek, there was conversation that we would maybe get the folks that just received the details, conversation, talking back and forth, and perhaps there could be something worked out? Or are there other suits piling?
There are no other suits. My recommendation, if you're looking to create a relief valve, is go ahead and adopt the current mitigation program, because that may benefit other properties who are not engaged in lawsuits, but who could apply today. The kind of relief that Bay Creek and Bayside are looking for is different and apart from what's in this particular program. So there's nothing that would prevent you from modifying or moving forward with a separate appeal program, modifying this program at a later date. So I don't see any reason to hold that part up.
Second.
Okay.
And then we could recommend that you bring before us some kind of an appeal program that we would modify at a later date. Is that what you're recommending?
That's what I'm recommending.
Okay, good.
Okay, so there's been a motion to approve by Councilman Corey and a second by Councilman Forbes. And further comment, Jesse.
Just question, I just want to ask this question again so I fully understand. If we lose this and they are not involved, how is this a viable tax? And would it affect anybody other than District 2 and District 5?
Clarification, it's a fee.
Yeah.
Call it a
Florida
tax,
law would
call
not
it a fee.
recognize it as a tax.
Thank you.
I can't really describe what the outcome would be.
What percentage of our community would be considered in the CDDs if this were to happen? So, well, I'll tell you, it's going to be very top-heavy. So if that portion is gone, who does that leave? That only leaves the people in the middle, and I can't support
The
that.
lawsuit is that only this CDD that's
It's not just for gated communities. It's meant for any a neighborhood or
Right.
community where they've done some water.
No, I get that, but my district, that's not the case, unfortunately.
Well,
So you have to vote, as a council person, you have to vote for your district. The
no,
people in
you-
my district, they
that's
don't
what I'm
have,
saying, but I think you're not being totally accurate in how it's only applying to 2 districts. It's any neighborhood that has put in their own stormwater management processes.
Right.
And another point would be like San Carlos Estates, they have their own water district, you
Right.
know? So maybe they would apply to it, I don't know if it would even apply, but, I mean, there's others that do that. But, I mean, you could vote anyway.
I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I guess to your point, Jesse, there's a lot of questions here still unresolved. There's a lawsuit pending, but here we are ready to ram this down people's throats again. So I'm not quite comfortable taking a vote tonight on this. I would like to table it for more, so we can flush out the lawsuit, flush out the percentage of Bonita Springs that this would affect.
I don't think I could ever give you that answer, because even if the lawsuit is fully successful, I cannot say that it will not, there's a chance that the lawsuit could invalidate the ordinance totally, or it could invalidate it with respect to Pelican Landing only.
So we want to vote on this tonight, not knowing really who it affects or how it affects our citizens.
You've already, the ordinance is in place, the fees are in place.
It's
You're not voting on, you're voting right now on a relief mechanism for communities affected by the fee.
And we can bring up abolishing the whole tax this summer during our budget workshop? Is that what you're telling me?
Absolutely.
Or is tonight the night to do that?
No, you can zero it out in your budget process, you can repeal the special assessment, the utility itself. That's always been an option.
You don't,
But if you love taxes, just keep voting for this.
we don't even have to abolish the facility. If people feel they don't want to exercise the fee, they could put it at 0. That's all you have to do. You don't have to abolish the facility if that's what you want to do. I think we should vote on this,
I
see
do
what
too.
happens.
Because other people won't be able to apply.
Correct.
And we just put everybody on hold.
we put raising taxes on hold too.
All right, so there's been a motion to approve, a second, a lot of unanswered questions, but is there further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Gibson.
No.
Councilmember Forbes.
Aye.
Councilmember Carumba.
Aye.
Councilmember Purdon.
No.
Councilmember Carr.
Aye.
Mayor Simmons.
No.
Councilmember Corey.
Resounding yes.
Okay, let the taxes continue. All right, item B.
That wasn't fair.
Well, it is. It is what it is.
Can
We
I-
heard a legal interpretation that the fee is a tax.
Can I make a
So
point?
that was my only point. Yes, Fred?
Well, let's assume that the majority of us do want to repeal this at some point. I think what you want to do is move the assessment to 0, because one of the benefits of the district is that people that are in a lot of people's district, like Lake Salazar, for example, Morton Grove, there's a whole bunch of places. If they want to go in and improve their property so it doesn't flood or does better water quality, one of the good things about the district was it forms a way where we can issue a bond through the district that they agree to assess themselves to pay. It goes on their tax duplicate. That's a big benefit to most of the communities in the whole city, whether it's IBE, whether it's Morton Grove, whether it's Lake Salazar, whether it's Pinecrest, whatever. There is that benefit. You'd be charging them $0, but you keep the district intact, which is something that most of you are not aware of, I think.
And the other thing is that position that we're talking about hiring someone to go test the waters, this would be certainly right up that pathway of showing the numbers, getting the validation that, sorry guys, you're not producing, or your nutrients are too high, and you're wrong, and so fix your problem. But I don't know if we're gonna just get rid of this whole thing again.
We voted, right?
Yeah, we have voted, but we're certainly welcome to have more conversation. Okay, no, that's great, okay. Item B, presentation by RG Architects and Wright Construction on the City Hall renovations project, including the guaranteed maximum price, GMP, accept proposal from Wright Construction Group for STA number 3 to the construction manager at risk consulting services agreement in the amount not to exceed $1,972,685 for City Hall renovations. Approval of a budget transfer between capital projects funds accounts and fund City Hall major repairs. Green sheet 20-07172. Arlene?
Thank you, Mayor. We do have our consultants via Zoom that will be starting.
Okay. Good evening. Welcome.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, city staff. Thank you for having us. So we'll make this short and simple. So basically, what we'd like to talk about is the project itself, and kind of it's broken out in different parts and pieces that are holistic, coming as one project. So there are 5 main points that we're looking at as we look at this overall project. So I'll go through each one of them so you have an idea of what the scope of the project is. So the item number 1 is the mechanical system. You have currently issues with a system that have issues bringing in moisture that is not supposed to, temperature control issues. You have a system that has actually end of life, given the age of the system. And you have continuing, ongoing maintenance issues with it. So we're trying to address that or we are addressing that as part of this project. Item number 2, it's re-roofing. You have a similar issue with the roof, end of life due to the age of the roof. You have current water infiltration into the building, so we're trying to address that through this project. And obviously, you have some warranty issues after the storm in 2017. The third issue that we are dealing with is security. You have, or the city had 2 reports, one from about 3 or 4 years ago, I would say 3 years ago, from a private provider or a private agency, and then one about a year or so ago from the local sheriff department, Lee County. Both of those reports yield some results, and there are some areas that need to be addressed within those security concerns. So that's item number 3. Item number 4 is as a public entity, you have a vested interest in making sure that you are ADA compliant. RG Architects did conduct a survey. We don't see any major issues within ADA, but there are a few that need to be addressed. Nothing dramatic or significant in terms of the layout of the building, but yeah, there are some things that need to be addressed within the building. And lastly, we have what we call the architectural upgrades. This is basically the glue that is holding all these items together, because at the end of the day, if you're going through a renovation process, the last thing you want to have is the feel that you kind of piecemeal the job. So we want to make sure that at the end, when everything is addressed, it all looks like one seamless renovation effort. So those are the main 5 criteria driving the project, or items driving the project. Just to reiterate what you mentioned, Mr. Mayor, the drawings were completed. We, RG Architects, performed the architectural services on the contract with Matern Engineering, who performed the MEP or the engineering services, along with Wright Construction, who did pre-construction services on the project to make sure that we were tracking on the project and on the budget and schedule. As you mentioned, Mr. Mayor, the GMP is $1.97 million, not to exceed. The construction process is estimated roughly about 5 months of construction. And out of the 5 items that I mentioned within the total project, they roughly break out in this manner. Mechanical system is about 45% of the allocated budget or the GMP. Roofing repairs is roughly about 10% of the overall number. Security improvements are about 15% of the overall project. ADA improvements are about 11.5%, and finally, what we call the architectural upgrades are about 18.5%. So that's kind of where we stand with the project. That's in a simple nutshell what it's all about. So unless you guys have any particular questions or comment, that's kind of a really brief overview of the process.
No, I appreciate that very much. Chris?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions, Javier. With respect to the timeline on the project, you mentioned 5 months. I've been talking to organizations that are in the hotel business, in other commercial properties. They are delaying construction because they cannot plan a time period given the COVID environment. They're concerned that as workers come on to the building site, that they're going to have primary and secondary contact issues with COVID, and that, you know, you could have, say, electricians come on to the site, somebody tests positive for COVID, and the rest of the subcontractors at that point will not feel comfortable about continuing work, or the electrical contractor may have to shut down his work, and then that sort of has a domino impact on the rest of the schedule and the time frame. So a lot of delay right now taking place. So how do we manage the scheduling of work when we have to also worry about COVID-19 and the impact on the site?
Yes. Understand that's a true concern, but you know there's a couple of things that go with this. Obviously, the project, when we started the project, this is all pre-COVID, so that's, you know, we are all found ourselves in this predicament of how we move forward. Making plans long term has been very difficult because things seem to be changing every week, and you know we're tracking the virus and whether we're opening or we're shutting down again and so on. Specific, and this is from our perspective in the project that we have currently ongoing with not only Right Construction but other contractors in the area, what we have seen is minimal impact in the time frame. This is not to say that this will not change for moving forward, but as far as we can tell, the construction sector has been extremely robust in keeping it in track with all the projects. We have schools that are going to be open or that the projects need to be completed by August, and those are all right on track. The only issues where we have seen some serious material delivery concerns are elevators and some mechanical equipment. In this case, the mechanical equipment, which is a big piece of this project, has already been isolated and put in line, ready should we get approval from the council on this item, can be released and move forward. But as far as we can tell, up to this point, I'm sure a week from today could very well be different. We have not seen major disruptions. I think that also has to do with a lot of the places that we are working with. It's new projects or existing projects where the project or the facility is being empty, so you're not mingling with the end user. In this case, phasing is something that we need to continue discussing with the county, given the most recent scenarios for COVID. But again, it's hard to predict what's going to happen in 5 months from what the information that we have up to this date, we should be on track to keep up with it. But then again, things change on a weekly basis, and from this point forward, we can only hope for the best. But it's a due concern.
Okay, well, thank you. I have one more question for you. I have the three-page, I guess you call it division cost breakdown. And I noticed on this where you talk about bid packages, bid packages 1, testing, big package 5, metal fabrication, so forth. It's my understanding that things are pretty well mobilized to go. I'm just curious with respect to these bid packaging, what was that bid process like with respect to the subcontractors? And secondly, was there any preference given to Bonita Springs companies or contractors able to do this work? And did you get multiple bids on each of these big packages? And has staff had a chance to review those? I'm not sure I know what the criteria was. For example, if we're going to take the amount we're spending on the air conditioning equipment, who's doing the work? How were they selected? What was the criteria? Are we taking the low bid, the middle bid, the high bid? So if you could give us some color on that whole process, that would be good.
Thank you, Chris.
Javier.
Absolutely. I can give you a big picture, and then I'll let Scott dive in a little bit on the details as needed. So this project was put together as a construction management project, which means that the city hires a construction manager company that oversees the whole process of getting the project, putting it out in the street via public venues and public advertising, receiving the bids, making sure that they qualify the process, that what people are bidding, apples to apples, and the scope is included. So Right Construction performed that for you guys, and that's what they provide in the GMP. As far as selecting subcontractors, the basic criteria is that you would select the lowest number of the most qualified, meaning that you look at the lowest number on that particular bid, but make sure that that particular bidder has all the information and all the criteria covered in there. So if you find that your lowest is not necessarily covering everything, then you would go to the next one. But in terms of that process, that's what your CM contractor is doing for you. And then they provide tallies as part of your GMP where you will be able to see, who participated and how that went about. Then lastly, in terms of your participation, I would like to point out that this COVID scenario actually benefited the project because, and this is just an example, the roof for your building, for the city building, is not necessarily a large roof for a roofing contractor, but yet we had, I believe, 11 or 12 bids on just that particular trade. So there was significant coverage because a lot of subcontractors are making sure they can capture as much work as they can due to the whole pandemic and the uncertainty. So definitely you had the benefit of getting a lot of bids. So with that said, I'll give it to Scott. So if you'd like to add a little more details on any of those items.
Yes. Hello, Mayor. Hello, Councilman, Councilwomen. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Little bit light, but we can hear you. Yes.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity. Javier touched on it really good. The lowest qualified bidder is who is selected for the project. And to touch on Councilman Jones' scope question, basically, Right Construction, as part of pre-construction, writes very detailed scopes of work. Some of these scopes of work are 3 and 4 pages. So when we send out for bids, which we advertised in the Naples Daily and the Fort Myers News Press on this project, when we advertise for bids, you get to bid on a specific scope. You can bid on more than one if you wish. But when you turn your bid in, you're signing off on that scope of work. So that keeps the playing field level. Everybody's bidding the same thing. So when we get in, like Javier mentioned, I think we got 12 or 13 roofing bids. That's just one example. I think we got 7 or 8 electrical, 7 or 8 mechanical. We had a lot of excitement and participation on this particular project. So scopes of work are very important on a renovation because there's lots of little hidden items that we catch in pre-construction that could become change orders or unforeseen conditions down the road. So we try to catch everything in those scopes of work that are broken down by division. So with that said, we did receive excellent participation in this job, and the lowest qualified subcontractor was selected for each trade.
Well, let me follow up on that, if I could. Was there any conversation with the city in terms of the requirements that we require of vendors when we do our purchasing on our own? In other words, I don't know all the requirements that we have in terms of licensing, insurance, minority participation, whatever our criteria are that we use. It seems to me that we're putting the right construction sort of in our shoes. And I'd like to know that, the same criteria that we would use for purchasing and qualifying vendors is being used to enter into contracts with subcontractors. So can you provide any information along that line?
Councilman Jones, that will be more for your purchasing department. Right construction was selected through the continuing service process, which is a state statute. We follow the procedures outlined in that contract. Right, we have insurances that we're obligated to provide you, bonding, liability, builder's risk, all that type of insurance, and we require that of our subcontractors.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. We're gonna, I think, get some explanation now.
I have Matt on the line.
Okay, great.
I'm gonna put him on speakerphone. So to clarify, what Matt has explained to me is that when we did pre-qualify through our purchasing process a construction manager. We have several that are selected throughout the city who can be construction managers for the city, who went through the RFP process to be selected. Once we selected the construction manager, we enter a contract with that's the process of which this goes forward. They are then our advocate in doing the bid process from there. Is that summarized, Matt?
Yeah, this is the construction managers. This is a new use of continuing services type of structure. We use this structure all the time for engineering firms and architects, where you basically create an RFQ and you select people based on qualification, and then you can utilize them to do projects, in that case design. This was an RFQ, so we selected several firms based on qualifications to do construction management and design build services. And so Wright Construction was on that list. They were recommended, I believe, by the air conditioning designer that we had on board, Mattern, as they had done the work with the Naples City Hall, I believe, not too long ago. So that's how they came to be. They were on a pre-selected list, and then ultimately, once council decided to work with that team, then Wright basically acts as your agent in bidding the work and managing it.
Chris, is that?
Well, it is what it is.
Yeah.
I just wanted the answers to it because, it seems like a fairly good-sized project, and we could help people out in Bonita Springs and make sure we're if we're wanting to favor those businesses, that somehow we would do this through the contract.
Right.
I'm just trying to figure out.
No, and not to belabor it, but Chris, I think you have a very good point, and I've heard it, but I would like to kind of rehear it from somebody about the Bonita Springs folks.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I did discuss this with them at the meeting, and their explanation to me was that they did put out the bids. They didn't have successful bids from directly in the area. But I mean, on a more holistic level, once we got to the point where we were doing, okay, here's what the dollar amount is going to be, now get the subs, I don't know if we carry the autonomy to decide who their subs are going to be at that level. I don't think we're that involved from a staff side, unless I misunderstood my discussion with Feeney, with Matt Feeney. Maybe you know, Arlene?
No, once you choose the process of the design construction manager, then they are our consultant in the design and construction of the project.
They do all of that.
But maybe your point, maybe I misheard you. We established the numbers
right
ahead of establishing the scope of the project and/or the people that were going to do the project.
Well, I mean, with construction bids, they do that all the time, though, because they're going to give you what the upfront they think it's going to be. And I mean, I've been with Feeney when he's sat with construction people, and he'll say, "Listen, I don't like change orders." So people are going to give what they think it's going to be, and then they're gonna like we do on a city level, probably go with the lowest qualified bid because it has to fall within the price range of the scope that they've agreed to. So they're not going to be giving out favors to people that are going to charge more, because then that's going to put them over budget. So I mean, that was how it was explained to me, and if I'm mistaken.
No, the actual, the individual bid, they have an idea of where they believe the project cost is to be. They advertise for the subcontractors to participate. They do a walkthrough. All are welcome to participate in the advertising. So there was no discrimination in whether they were, they were encouraged to participate.
But that's a completely blind bid, I guess, maybe for lack of a better term?
Well, they do it locally, I think, through our papers, right?
Yes, they advertise in the Naples Daily News and the News Press.
Understood, but the parameters and the dollar ranges and the scopes, I guess.
Well, the scopes are prepared by Wright Construction. Let
me back out the scopes.
Okay.
The dollar amounts. When do those enter the equation, and how do they enter?
Scott, could you clarify that the individual subs provided you with their cost estimate, correct?
Real quick, and then I'll let you compliment Scott. So basically, in the construction management, Mr. Mayor, what you are getting, when we initially get in the project, typically what an owner would like to know from either the pre-construction services or from the design team is, hey, what is my budget? In the case that you might not have one. So we come together and we, for a lack of a better term, we make our best guess based on what you want, without having drawings and going any depth into the project. We say, well, roughly what our experience tells us is that we should be in this range. That particular range or budget that you establish is not shared when you put out your bid documents, because the budget is just an estimate. It's a guess. It's a probable estimate of construction. Now, when you put out your bids, you're not giving them, hey, you got to be in this number. All you're doing is putting out the construction documents that have all the information. You're putting out all the scopes from the contractor that say, you, Mr. HVAC contractor, you should make sure that in addition to covering everything that is in the drawings, that you look at all these little items and make sure your number includes all that. So all of those numbers, all that information is provided in a public format through advertising, in this case, the news press and Naples Daily. And then anybody that wants to bid on this project has the ability to, and they will reach out to the contractor and say, yes, I'm willing to bid on the project, and they will do so. After the bids are done, and there's a specific time frame of when you submit and when you need to get everything back, after the construction manager gets everything, they're gonna open up all those bids, and they're gonna say, okay, for roofing, we got X amount of bids, and let's start tally up the numbers. So you'll see all the numbers, from the lowest to the highest. And then obviously we're going to try to focus on the lowest number, and then talking to those contractors and saying, did you include this? Did you include that? And making sure that the lowest number is the most qualified. If it's not, then you move on to the second one. So this is the normal CM process where the construction management is working on your behalf to take care of all the qualifying and all the time-consuming effort, but all this information is open to you for your review and to look at and see, where the numbers landed. But basically, you are hiring the construction manager to do this on your behalf. Scott, would you like to add anything to that depiction?
Oh, thank you, Javier. Scott Liacano, Senior PM for Wright Construction. Yes, we do. The first thing we do is sit down and develop the owner's project requirements. What do you want to accomplish out of this project? look at the square foot, look at what we're going to do, and then as a contractor, this is what we do. You know, renovations, we're renovating the FGCU, I mean, all kinds of Harborside. I mean, we have historical data, so we look at the project and we come up with a ballpark estimate. And then the design team puts together the drawings based on the owner's project requirements and what we come up with in the estimate. And then we move forward from there into the schematic design budgeting process. And then we move forward with construction documents after we review the schematic design with the team. We refine that in the construction documents, and the construction documents are what goes to the subcontractors to bid. And as Javier stated, you know, we might get a low bid who crossed out half the items of the scope of work or didn't even read them. So if we get a real low number, you know, we're going to call that guy and go through that with them or lady and go through that bid with them. And they might not have half of everything. They might not have a big scope item. So then we have to talk to, and then we have to add that number to it. You know, we work with everybody, but in the end of the day, the numbers we put on the spreadsheet are the lowest qualified subcontract.
Okay, thank you. Chris?
Javier said on the.
What I have, I think, is just for our own discussion.
Okay.
I don't have any more questions.
Okay. Fred?
Yeah, I have one question. It's primarily because there are people that have said they didn't know or was never disclosed. What was the cost to replicate this building with the improvements on it if we build it on a brand-new site, excluding site costs?
I believe, Councilman Javier, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe looking at the square footage of approximately 17,000 square foot with a new council built City Hall, I believe we're talking about 6 to 8 million, 7 to 9 million, something in that range, right, Javier?
Well, it's a little bit trickier, and again, this is kind of what we do for a living, just projecting what things could be. So if you think of a facility, roughly what you have is about 13,500 square feet in the current facility that you have. Say that you wanted to replicate exactly that in a new site. Well, there's some ballpark costs, cost per square foot that we use in construction for guesstimating. So you can do simple math. Let's figure about on a project this type with all the different systems that need to go in place. Say that we look at $250 per square feet. So if you do the math of that, 250 times 13 and a half, that's about $3.3 million just in building. That doesn't include site improvements and soft costs and everything else that goes with it. So that number quickly goes up, but that is obviously something that you can always look at and see how you project it. But that would be in my perception, just pure building. Obviously, if you're going to another side, you might gonna be thinking about making the building a little bit bigger for more for future expansion and so on. So you just increase your budget by that much. But hopefully that gives you a rough idea, Mr. Councilman.
For this, Javier Scaliacano, one more time to chime in, for this type of facility, we're not seeing $250 a square foot. We're probably seeing more like $350.
There you go.
So, just, historical data.
Yeah, because you would build it with some of the amenities like the hardened windows and doors and stuff like that you're putting in.
So that'll be about $4.7 million just on the building itself, plus site improvements, plus soft costs, plus legal fees and so on.
Right.
You okay for now, Fred?
Yeah.
We can certainly, Mike?
No, that was, one of my questions is, if we built another one, approximately how much it would be, but, I remember they gave us that number early on, and I think it was about the same, so.
Amy?
The only question I have is, I think also in our meetings, I had inquired, like, what the life of the building is after it's renovated, and Do you remember, Arlene, what they said?
So what we're
15
including
years or
now, what
15,
you'd be
20 years?
renovating would give you 20 additional
years?
years for the roof and around 15 to 18 on the air conditioning again.
All right, and so,
That's correct.
Thanks, Amy. Laura,
I'm good.
you're good? Jesse?
Discussion, but I think after they're off is fine.
Okay. Chris, anything else for them?
After they're off.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your presentation. I think we're okay for now, and now we'll have a discussion amongst ourselves.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Council, thank you.
Okay, Chris, do you want to?
Well, yeah, a couple of things that, I would just reference the RFP for audit services. And if you remember that RFP that we put out, it had sort of all these mandatory type of qualifications and so forth that everybody had to meet. And in particular, we talked about giving preference to local firms, which was the 3-county area. And we also talked about that under the, government single audit requirement, we had to include minority firms. Setting that aside, I did wonder if there were certain qualitative aspects to this bid process that they went through to consider Bonita Springs businesses, Bonita Springs contractors, people that did air conditioning work, roofing work, so forth. If we were acting as our own general on this thing, as opposed to Wright, we were acting as a general contractor, what kind of requirements would we have put into those bids that wouldn't necessarily mean we get to this qualified lowest bid, but there would be other criteria that they'd have to meet. So that's one thing. The other thing is, what this doesn't do in its present location is solve parking issues. We're going to continue to, if we want the public to get involved in city matters, and one of the things I'm trying to do is to encourage more and more people to become involved and to take a look at and help us in terms of planning for the city's growth. Then we're still going to have the problem with the parking, and then we run the risk that if we get too many people showing up, the post office is going to come over here during a 9 o'clock meeting and say, you guys got to move. And the third thing is we put $2 million into the building, and then what's the market value of the building going to be if we decide that based on growth, that in 2030, we have to move somewhere? How much of that money are we going to recover? I agree that this building needs to be fixed. If nothing more, it needs to be fixed to make it marketable. I mean, obviously, you can't have a roof that leaks. You got to have a working air conditioning system and so forth. But I think, it seems to me like we need to make sure we understand what the market value of the building is, and we need to make sure that it serves the public in terms of parking for meetings such as this or such as zoning and so forth. So those are my comments, and I just hope we're not trying to rush to. I would like to see maybe Matt take a look at some of the bid processes that Wright went through. Doesn't have to look at all of them, but maybe look at 2 or 3 of the major ones, and just make sure that everything was copacetic.
And Chris, to your point, I think it's a great point. Do we know the market value of this property?
What I have is the property appraiser's value, which is not necessarily the exact market value, but it's $1,296,075, and that's what the property appraiser has assigned. We did reach out. We don't have an answer yet from CBRE to determine if there's a difference in value as to the renovations to be done, the value that would increase it. But that's the dollar amount listed on the property appraiser's website.
Right, and I know you get in trouble when you make guesses or hypotheticals, but generally that's that's about 2/3 of the real value. Okay, I'm gonna go around the horn. Jesse?
I mean, I have no allegiance to the plan because it was done in the council before I got elected. But looking through it and kind of looking at the numbers, so if we're talking 7 to 9 million to replicate it, and that doesn't include the cost of the land, and we have no consensus on where we would actually want it. Initially, back in the start of time of Bonita, we wanted it downtown. Now the question is, depending on what happens with Bamboo, where are we going to put it, and would it be appropriate to be there? We haven't even opened the bids yet, so I couldn't tell you. So I think the fact that we don't have a location, and I don't care for the Terry location that has been floated, I don't care for that at all. So my thing is, if we're looking at potentially spending 7 to 9 million, not including a site, and it's going to be 1 million to get us a new AC, get us ADA compliant, and get us a roof, we need to do that at a minimum to even be able to sell the place. So at a minimum, I'm okay with the AC, the ADA, and the roof compliance because we have to do that at a minimum. But I think I don't think we make this a new capital improvements project because then we're talking, another $6 to $9 million and we're punting it down the road. Yes, it's a Band-Aid, but it gets us up to where we need to be able to make decisions. And I'm not very comfortable with the idea of saying, okay, we're going to spend 6 to 9 million potentially on a place that we don't know where it's going to be when we have an AC that's failing and a roof that's failing. Like at a minimum, we have to take care of the house, and the house is not being taken care of right now. For a little bit over $1 million, we can do the minimum. For 1.9, we can do pretty much everything, and then we're good for 20 years. And then we can get to the fish that we really need to fry, in my opinion. So that's where I'm at.
Thank you, Jesse. Laura?
I'm good.
You're good? Okay. Amy?
I agreed with pretty much all you said. I do think that because we can't avoid doing certain things that are very expensive, we might as well go the whole route and we get a facility, particularly the security aspects that, I think are really important that we do. And I do think that the parking is an issue, but I think we could do that with process. And in fact, in the past, that's what we've done. Maybe we should do a better job of doing that. And there are things coming down the pike that we might be able to address that. But no one wants to spend $1.9 million, especially with the situation we're in. But I think we should go ahead with it. So I'm going to vote in favor.
Thanks, Amy. Mike?
Ditto.
Okay. Fred?
Yeah, I think we've forgotten, I think it was a unanimous vote, but the property that is immediately to the east of us is going to be doing some stuff. Remember, we traded off wetland, moved it all, gave them credit, and part of the agreement was that they would open it up so that if we were having a night meeting, there'd be a cut through and it would have overflow parking over there. I think that I agree with what Jesse has said. I think one thing you can do, which is one of the advantages of going with a CM, Matt and Arlene could meet with the construction manager and say, look, we want to look at the bids with you, and particularly, are there any local people that bid on this that were just that far away from getting a job, and what can we do to try and work some of that out?
Right. Does that sound plausible, Arlene?
We're happy to review the individual bids, and yes, as long as the qualifications are there, that's.
Sure.
And we would look for their recommendation.
From a practical standpoint, if we do that and there's somebody who is a little bit different, are you saying that we can now go to the CM and say, hey, choose this one instead of that one? Because then what if that changes their price? So now we say use the guy who's going to cost us, $40,000 more because he's local. Now is he going to come back to us and say it's not 1.2, now it's 1.2 plus the 40?
Well, the direction I thought I was hearing was not to look at, you were saying if someone was very close is what he was saying. I didn't hear that if there was, and also my caveat to that is the qualified scope that they're bidding on, that's correct.
And just to understand it conceptually, once we give it out to a CM, do we then give the autonomy for those decisions to that CM, or are they held to the specific RFP rules that we as a city use?
So to choose the CM.
Right.
That
They
is
are
done under
paid.
the procurement process of the city.
So then after the deal.
Correct.
They pick the contractors to try to fall within the specified bid amount.
And one of the benefits of this is you are a government light. You would have to have staff dedicated to meet individually, provide those tours with the individual, and have the expertise to understand that the scope and what they're bidding is matching in dollar value, that you're getting the appropriate services when you're reviewing them. So the part of the government light process is to go through an RFQ process, select a qualified construction manager who has the experience to properly handle it and bid it.
Fred?
Well, a comment, a little more. Number one, I think the reason that I understood that Wright Construction was picked was because they did a building down in Naples, I think it was the City Hall, and they kept the building in operation, which is the big thing that we're doing. And that's tough. You got to have somebody that's done it before to do a job where you're trying to keep the building, where the people are working upstairs and you're working down, or vice versa. Secondly, when you look at these bids, even if they're close, if it's a very small company and it's a pretty big-sized job, you may not want to do it anyway, because if you had a heavy attack of the virus or whatever, it'd be more difficult for them to, but I think there's no harm to look at it. That's my point. And probably there may be one or two contracts that's real close that would work out. There may not be, but it doesn't cost anything to talk.
We could look at it, but I think that's not a.
I think the people that need to look at it is Matt, Feeney, and Arlene.
Who's doing it
No,
for us?
There are all kinds of qualitative issues that could be involved there, so I think we can look at it if there's some reason we want to verify that the bids were appropriate, but I think it's not a prudent path to go down.
Agreed.
Okay, so there's a motion, actually, no.
Well, I still go back to my original opening comments, is that I would, I would also like to table this until the next meeting where, we're talking about in front of the public.
Sure. And there again, just to be, actually, Chris, I'm fine with that. I won't be here. Not that, either here nor there, but yeah.
Is time of an essence, what's the timing here? I mean, should we delay it, what's the
So-
point of doing it 2 more weeks, or
So what we're happy to, it's the pleasure of the council, but what I wanted to reiterate, the timeline we were working on to try to accomplish the project was so that we would be ready for season of next year. So typically, season are heavier attended meetings, and we tried to do our workshops in the January, February, March time period. But if we can also work through waiting for the next meeting as well. It's on the timeline of when we would like to be operating functional again. That's what we're looking at.
And I completely respect that, Arlene, and that's incredible. But to Chris's point, just like on this earlier issue, we've got some question marks here, and I'd like to get them solved or resolved or discussed. And if, so I don't know that 2 weeks is going to be a big difference on the overall scope of the project.
I don't understand the question.
And we did bring this up in front of council many times. This isn't just something we decided last week. We all actually then met individually and fleshed out questions one-on-one. We've met more than once with this team. They're very well qualified. And we don't have property to buy,
This is not about whether or not we buy some other property. That would take a full-blown feasibility study. It's whether or not, how much money is prudent to put into this building. And the budget for this building in the fiscal year 21 budget was a little over about $750,000, okay? And I have yet to find, in going back through the council minutes, I went back as far as November, where there was any mention in the council minutes, any public discussion about what I call scope creep, or, while we're at it, we might as well do this, which suddenly all of a sudden moved that 750,000 up to $1,972,000. And so that's, now while we met with the engineer and so forth, we met with them. There wasn't any public participation at those meetings out at the fire district where I met with them. So that's all I'm saying is, I think we owe it to the people to explain what we're doing, how we got there, that it's been, try to make the process as transparent as possible.
See, I didn't understand that was your issue. Your issue is that the public hasn't been fully apprised of the process we went through when we had individual meetings with.
I can't find a record of it.
I was gonna say, I agree, Chris, I don't know how they could have been, given these circumstances, and that's nobody's fault, I just think it's the reality.
No, so what I understand, in October of, the budget, I guess it was October 18th, we started to discuss the air conditioning issues, and there was a contract with Mattern at that time. We then, as we discussed the budget, the issues, the CIP included out years for the roof to be addressed, and we had been discussing the security issues which are protected under Florida statutes. That you're correct. Those items were not discussed publicly. The infrastructure needed for security. But as we moved through the process for the air conditioning, we then, yes, we had individual meetings with council to discuss, and it was recommended to us that if we were going to prepare the air conditioning at that level of cost, we would at that time decide whether we were going to spend the same amount of money to save the ceiling tiles or save the lighting and store it versus upgrading to the LED lighting and the tiles. At the same time, you have to spend the same amount of money to preserve the carpeting or replace the carpeting. So those were the other meetings that we had. And what happened was the out years did have discussion on the additional improvements needed, but the cost to do it at the same time was the recommendation we had received.
So if you add together those out year things, what does it add up to? Is it a lot less than 1.9? And it doesn't have anything for
City
security
facility
in there,
major
right?
repairs. Let me find, this isn't the. This isn't the correct one. I have to, I'll have to look at, this is not the correct CIP number because I knew.
Well,
You're looking, Chris, I mean, I'm responsive to what you're saying in regard to not having full information being put before the people. So, but I wouldn't want to delay it more than 2 weeks.
I'm not suggesting
So
we do.
let's just give some direction to the staff of what kind of information we want presented and make it formally in some kind of presentation. And then we could, we can vote on it and then the people have a chance to react to it. So I'm good with that. I mean, it's all, other than, I think.
I think at the next meeting, we explain to the public
Right.
how we got to the point where we're at, what we went through in terms of the bids, what this is going to achieve, what it's going to solve, what it's not going to solve, and make a presentation so that they at least understand.
I'm good with that.
So Chris, I'm taking that as your motion, and I will second that, and then further discussion. Fred?
Yeah, I have no problem with doing this, but I think when we have this presentation, be sure that they make these kind of things in it. If you take and put the LED lights in, which is what the current plan is, that has a ripple effect. Number one, your electric bill drops, but also the tonnage for the air conditioning system goes down. So you can't just say, oh, we'll stay with these lights, because if you do, that means they have to put bigger air conditioners in to make up for the heat that comes off the lights. LED, like one of these burns maybe 100, 120 watts. An LED that'll put out the same light will be 20 watts. And there's a big lot difference, 5 times less.
I'm sure the staff will figure this
Yeah,
out.
so that needs to be included in the presentation. And I would also suggest that they refine this cost to replicate the building with the improvements that we're talking about.
Just to clarify, Meg, she did calculate the CIP till 2024, which was the out years. It was 1.62 million.
All right, so this is basically 300,000 more, and that didn't include the security, right? We didn't have anything in for security, did we?
In the 2019 budget, we may have looked at this.
But anyway, we're talking about 1.6 already shown that.
Right, till 2024.
That the people could have looked at if they wanted to, and we're bringing it all forward because it is more efficient in the long run to do it together. I think that's basically what you're saying, but I would be in favor of.
Yeah, because I'm not
I
sure.
think another thing that came out was that they got some people that are really sharp on ADA to really go through this place, and they found a lot more things than they realized that didn't meet ADA.
Once you touch it, you got.
The ADA was not included in those estimates.
But these are all things you could put in the staff report that we'll see in a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so there's a motion to move this to the next meeting, continue the discussion, public input, answers, Q&A. And there's a second. Is there further discussion, Council?
Yes.
Jesse?
As far as that goes, I don't necessarily want this to be, okay, so we do 2 weeks, we wait 2 weeks, and then we're gonna have an info session about it, and then we're gonna sit and we're talking about it again. I'm afraid it turns to a subcommittee, and then we're talking about this again next year.
I think
I
Amy
mean-
made the point, and Chris, I think, was fine with it, that we're going to vote on it.
Okay, so we are gonna vote on it,
We're gonna have
okay.
a presentation and vote, but it'll give people an ability to look at how those, we had a private meetings, so we know a lot of this stuff, but it is the case that we didn't, I didn't talk to anybody. I mean, who's talking to anybody now?
So, well, and, okay, so, I mean, at the end of the day, at a minimum, I just want to understand this. We have to do the ADA, we have to do the roof, we have to do the AC. That's 1.2.
security.
And security. So we're looking at over $1 million just to do the essentials to get us up to the point where we could even sell it if we wanted to go down that route.
Or functioning.
1.6.
Or functioning.
More importantly, that we
1.6.
can function in it.
Exactly. Okay. That's clear for me.
Yeah, Mike?
I mean, discussing it tonight, isn't that what we normally do? That's usually the president, something's on a green sheet, the public has interest in it, they pay attention to the meeting, they get their questions answered, so I don't see why we're not voting on it tonight.
I agree.
I mean, we're a representative form of government, we were all elected because they felt that we had the best interests of of them to represent them, so I mean, that's what we're here for, is to represent our community.
We're doing it because it's not our money, it's their money. And I think they have a right to know how we got to the decision that we're making. I think a reasonable person would have a hard time going through the CIP sheets, figuring out you need to add the out years to get to $1.6 million, which is only missing the ADA component. I mean, sitting here, I've looked at this thing for a week, and sitting here, I'm even learning some things about how you got to this process. And all I'm saying is it's only fair to share it.
Maybe one of the options they give us is what the bare bones version of it would be, what it would look like, to get it up to snuff, the bare bones of what we would have to do and what that would cost comparable to the 1.9. But I think the 1.9 is pretty much as close. I don't know what you can take out of it, because looking at it line by line, I don't see much on there that can come out other than the security component. And I mean, we're already spending, if we're gonna spend 1.2, 1.9 to do all of the security upgrades. If we end up not moving, it will be a good move. If we end up moving, then maybe we wasted that money, but those are all things we have to consider.
Can we vote?
Yes, there's been a motion and a second. As long as anybody has any further conversation, roll call, please.
Councilmember Carumba.
Aye.
Councilmember Purdon.
Aye.
Councilmember Carr.
No.
Mayor Simmons.
Aye.
Councilmember Corey.
Aye.
Councilmember Gibson.
No.
Councilmember Forbes.
Aye, but I'm going to be voting for it.
Yeah, I don't think that's probably shared by a lot of folks, Fred, so.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on this, Derek? Or Arlene, one way or another? Okay. City attorney's items. Derek?
Yes, we have received two responses to a bid for digitizing our files. There were some questions that came up in the responses that we would like to address. Primarily, we're concerned that the way the two respondents provide their answers without additional clarification could lead to sort of runaway costs. And so we're not disclosing those bidders or their amounts. We'd like to re-advertise immediately on a short window and give them both an opportunity to clarify those issues that weren't addressed before the bids are received.
So do those stay sealed? And-
They stay sealed.
And then everybody else can go out, and it goes out, what, 60 or 90 days?
Oh, I think we were thinking like 30 days.
We were thinking 30 because
This is a priority issue,
this is a
but,
pri- yes.
but it is the kind of issue that could be a couple of $100,000 or $1 million. So when the way that it came back in the bids,
That matters.
Yeah, okay.
So moved.
Yeah. You have 7 nods, I think, to be okay, Derek, with that, okay?
Do you need a motion on?
Anything,
yeah, we do
you want a
need
motion?
on
We
that.
need a
To reject all bids and re.
Okay, and I'll second that. Amy made the motion, and I'll second it to reject all bids and carry on. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Purdon.
Aye.
Councilmember Carr.
Aye.
Mayor Simmons.
Aye.
Councilmember Corey.
Aye.
Councilmember Gibson.
Aye.
Councilmember Forbes.
Aye.
Councilmember Carumba.
Aye.
Okay, great. Derek, anything else?
The only other thing I'd like to talk about is with respect to going to our next couple meetings, now that maybe that won't change because of the action you just took, but we've got some fairly large land use items coming up that are going to bring out a lot of public. And whether it's here or the fire station may be too constrained. We need to start advertising for those locations fairly soon. And even with adding a digital component for the public to comment, I want to see where the council's thoughts are on trying to secure larger facilities.
I would just say, and I'll just get it kicked off. In my mind, I would think the fire station would be big enough, but maybe it's not. So maybe the church is the answer, and if it's not the church, where do we go that's big enough? Hertz Arena?
Just given our experience today, I don't want to be trying to figure it out at the beginning of the meeting.
Correct. No, and your point's well taken. Absolutely. Fred?
Yeah, having done about 4 years of duty over there in that big room, the occupancy of that room is somewhere between probably 250, and when you put in the social spacing, that 250 is going to come out to about 50 spots. It's bigger than this, clearly, but it's not that much bigger. I would say this, I would not be in favor of going back to the church till they gave us a little earpiece, because before that, I couldn't hear jack squat there. But once with the earpiece, I could hear. And the people in the audience, I guess they could hear pretty decent, but we couldn't hear.
And then I know on TV, there was people said, I can't hear anything, but,
I do think that we should look at other places.
Oh, yes.
I'm not 100% sure. I think we might be imposing on the church, because it is a responsibility to put a couple hundred people in there. I don't even believe they have services in there. So when they're just, a few people in there, it might be one thing, and I wouldn't want to impose on them, because it'd be hard for them to say no to us. So if there's some alternative to that, I think we should explore it.
High school.
The other alternative, just something to consider, is if we can't find a bigger facility, we are moving forward now, doing all the land use meetings on a rotating basis to get them cleared out. Based on your last meeting direction, you wanted everything up at the front of the meeting. That will, of course, if we had, say, 2 or 3 big meetings, mean a lot of people will show up at one time. On these limited basis, I would like to have the ability, if we cannot find a large enough facility, to do those time-certain meetings again, which would spread out the groups, because there might be people who show up for Weeks Fish Camp, there may be people who show up for the Bonita Beach Hotel. These other projects, they're not necessarily going to duplicate the number of people if we can't find a space. So that is always an option to help, lower the crowds.
I heard, I think Jesse mentioned it, but is the high school an option, or
Yes.
conceivably would it be an option?
We can reach out to the school board, but I know that other folks who've reached out, they've not been utilizing that space currently. So, but we can try. I think we can also look to other church facilities to see who might be, so that we're sharing in good graces, sharing our burden of, of having us.
Maybe hold off on the high school simply because in my comments you're going to hear, and you already know, I'm going to be bringing up the billboards. They're not going to be pleased about that. So maybe we just don't go there.
I can't hear you when you turn away.
Okay, sorry. No, I was saying, Arlene knows in my member comments I'm going to talk about the billboards. So the high school's not going to be pleased with us probably shortly because they have non-conforming signs in Imperial. So, so if we take, I'm just saying, I don't know how pleased they're gonna be about that, because they're in multi-year, significant financial contracts that are in non-compliance with what's an allowable
We were
use.
talking to them about.
We are, but they decided to pretty much, everything got stalled because of COVID.
Talking to them.
Well, we tried to.
I brought that up like a year ago.
They told Dulmer to essentially, they're in their contracts, they don't want to do it.
Well, I understand that there were contracts that were involved.
Yeah. And the school board is not going to easily
Since
take
we're
those
not
down.
all privy to this, could we maybe table this discussion and put it on a green sheet and bring it up?
I think that's great.
I think I'll just talk about it in my members,
That's good.
committee members.
Thank you, Jesse. Fred?
There's two other locations you ought to look at. The gym at the Y, but also look at the private charters or the charter schools. They probably have a facility, and they'd be easier to deal with more than likely than another location.
What's wrong with the firehouse?
But clearly, we need something a lot bigger than the fire station.
Yeah, I don't think.
Now, we could meet in the bay of the fire station if they moved the trucks out, but we need more space.
We could put a tent outside for the people, couldn't we? I mean, they do, I mean, really, seriously, and then call them in individually.
Doesn't one of the big communities you guys live in have a place that we could use?
Not that,
Well-
it's not.
No, we don't.
No.
I mean, that big, what used to be Bell's Outlet down here is empty. So if we knew the property owner or who, that would be a site that's enclosed, air-conditioned, it's got electric in it. So, and it's a huge, huge space.
But they said that was gonna be like a grocery store at Aldi's, didn't they?
No, that's where Sweetwater was.
Oh, okay.
Bell's is right there.
I thought something was just announced it was going in there. I forgot what it was. Anyway, but that's a good point. I don't know if people like to open their buildings when they're closed, but.
So Derek, I mean, we don't have an answer, but you have direction that I think we're in agreement to see what we can find? Yeah, okay, very good. Arlene, what else do you have?
For my items, Ann is not able to join us this evening, so she's going to email out the new projections she's received on revenue.
Okay.
With an update. What I was gonna suggest too is, we'd like to start hearing from you all if there's any budgetary preparation you'd like to see as CIP, anything you'd like us to explore individually, any projects. We've finalized the presentations of the CIP to you in the different strategic priorities, but if there's something you'd like to address with us as staff, and so we can prepare for July 27th, we're happy to hear from you on those, or email them to us so we can share. And then my only remaining item would be the continued update regarding COVID-19. We're continuing to provide information out regarding the governor's latest executive orders. We're also continuing to get information from Lee County on the CARES process that we have. We are entitled to some CARES funds as well individually through CDBG. So we're going to be bringing forward some projects for that. And then my last item to update, which Mayor, you may as well, is also we've been in contact with Carol Green, and then the mayor has been in contact with our individual Representative Rodriguez and Senator Pastadoma. And the governor's budget did include our $750,000 request. I did email out to you all the description of that request. Also, the second request on there, which was not a part of the budget, was we would continue to move forward with Bonita Springs Utilities on looking at partnership opportunities. And so staff's continued that conversation, and we'll be giving additional updates on that as well.
Okay, great. Thank you, Arlene. Mayor and council member items. Let's start with Chris Corey.
I don't have any.
You're good, Chris? Okay, thanks for everything. Jesse?
Two short things, real quick. Number one, I did speak to Commissioner Hammond about beach parking passes, because I think if this continues to be a situation whereby Collier has parking for their residents and we do not have parking for our residents, and the East Coast continues to shut down their beaches, we're going to be in a situation where I think we're really well set now to give preferential treatment to the people who live here year-round. And that we used to, back in the day, you might recall Lee County used to have them, and back farther in time, Bonita actually had them as well. We did away with them because we thought we would make money in the meters. and I'm not saying this is a permanent solution, but I mean, not knowing what the trajectory looks like and how this beach scenario goes, and knowing that we can't control the other coast, and knowing that Collier is going to do it, I think it's in our best interest as a county, and or if we can as a county, as a city, to try to give our residents at least preferential treatment in regards to parking at the beaches. We don't all have Bonita Bay. We don't all have our own beach. So those of us who go to the beach on a regular basis, I think it would be great if they could have the ability to get a sticker. So from a staff perspective from our side, I would love to find out what we would need to do to carry that conversation forward. I started it with the Lee County, but from a city side, I'd like to know what we can do as well. So whatever that looks like, if you could follow up with me, I'd appreciate it. Yeah, and then also the signs, we'll get into that another time, but the short version, I think Councilwoman Crumba was on this about a year ago, and on Imperial, as you're going down, you can see they have non-conforming signs. My issue is really they're huge, they're not attractive. I was on the phone with the president of Hawthorne last night. They're not pleased in there either with those. And it kind of, we hit a standstill with the school board, so I had asked Arlene and Dahmer, and I know you were actually trying to set up a meeting too, Mr. Mayor, that I would like to reinitiate conversation on this. And even if the scenario is their stance is, hey, we're already in contracts, fly a kite, fine. I would like to know where we stand with the school board. And naturally, they aren't going to want to give up their money, but they need to conform if they're in the city. So I think that's our stance, and then I think we just kind of get everybody at the table, and then we'll just kind of, move from there. But first and foremost, I did ask Dahmer to potentially try to reinitiate getting people at the table. Specifically, the principal needs to be there, obviously. But I feel there's a decent rapport there. We did an award for the sheriff there about a year ago. He was there the entire time. We had very good dialogue. I'm hopeful he'll be reasonable and we can just discuss it. And, even say, for all we know, the contract could be up in 2 months. Okay, so if it's about to be up and we don't even talk to them, how do we know? So maybe it's up in 2 months and we can end this. Maybe it's 2 years, we don't know. But we won't know until we have the talk. So those are my 2 items.
At a minimum, we should, I think it must be public information to have those contracts available. We should at minimum know when the contract is up.
Yeah,
All right,
absolutely.
and then go forward. And then we, unless they did it for 20 years, which I doubt it, I'd be willing to just let them wind down.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay. Thank you. Laura?
4th of July this weekend. Our country will be 244 years old. Okay, so come out and watch from your cars safely. And maybe read the Declaration of Independence so we can have 245-year celebration.
Very good. Okay. Thank you, Laura. Amy?
Well, this is somewhat related to what you said, because I reiterate, I'm so delighted that we're having a drive-in fireworks, and I just wondered if we could, is anybody going to say anything, or are we doing any public service announcements? Because I do want to recognize the fact that this is the celebration of the birth of our nation, and I am interested about a project that the Heritage Foundation is sponsoring, where they're asking everybody, and I just pulled this up, but if you go on there, these little signs that say, I'm a proud American, and they're asking people to either write on their Facebook page or do a video and say why you're proud to be American and why it's great to be celebrating our 244th anniversary, because we're missing all that, because there are no celebrations anywhere. So if we could do something like that, maybe on our TV station, or we put out some messages from the council, or maybe we all come out and come up with a message about why we're proud to be an American, and we are participating in this unbelievable experiment called the American government. So I feel bad that we're not doing more of that. I understand why we're not. But if we could do something, that's what I'm going to do something. I don't know if I'm going to do a video. I'm not good on video, but I'm going to do it on my Facebook, I think.
The mayor is going to record a pre-message to the fireworks. I know Laura's working with you on that.
We were supposed to do it tonight, but then things.
If any other council members would like to participate with a message, we can do that as well. And then I did hear from Laura that the other cities are going to also linked up with us as well, showing our broadcast as well. So.
Okay.
Great. Thank you. Mike?
I'm good, thanks.
Fred?
Good.
Good? Okay, we talked about 4th of July, in violent agreement, Laura, there, absolutely. And Amy, thank you for bringing that up. The $750,000 grant, great work by Carol Green, and great work, I guess, quite frankly, by all of us that have gone up there and talked about that. But quite frankly, just really a hats off to this administration for realizing the importance of water and water quality and water quantity and flooding and the like. I think you obviously saw there was a lot of projects vetoed because of Corona, but I just want to sincerely applaud the administration, and that 750,000 now does officially get us over 30 million, right, Arlene? So, great work, and let's keep it up. So,
And Mayor, I'm sure you're going to do this, but could we set an official thank you to not only the governor, but Carol and
Absolutely.
and Ashley
And Ray and Kathleen, too.
Yes, we could get those letters. Yes.
Pasadoma and Ray Rodriguez, and get them out, and we could send them out, and we could, I mean, I'd be happy for us all to sign it, because I'm going to send a personal note myself, but I think we should do it officially.
Absolutely. I agree.
And thank you for the effort that you made and the outreach that our people have done. So it was a very pleasant surprise in a time when we need some good news.
Right. Fred?
And the total is 35 million, but we have to come up with about 5.5 of match. So that gives us, with the match and that's 40, but 35 plus is what the grants total up to.
Yeah, it's great work. All right, team, anything else? We have, I guess, some minutes to approve.
Mayor,
So moved.
Yes, Arlene.
I did have one, Nicole just gave me a heads up that the city's recreation center gym is actually larger than the Wise gym. So if you'd like to move your next meeting to that location, we're happy to do so. And that way we can give some direction to the land use consultants and attorneys ahead of time and start advertising.
Okay,
We
is
don't have
that
to
all right
ask
with everybody?
We don't have to get permission.
Yeah, right. Think we can get through the permission process?
I don't know.
I hope so.
Plenty of parking.
Do we need a permit?
Okay, approval of the minutes, and that would be for June 3rd and June 17th.
So moved, second.
So moved. Uh-oh, Rooney. Up, sorry. Approval of the minutes for June 3rd, 2017, Derek, and June 17th of 2020. So we do have a typo.
Writing all of it, I know.
We'll make that for June 3rd of 2020 and June 17th of 2020. Motion to approve, and a second.
Second.
Well,
Further discussion.
I actually wasn't comfortable with the minutes on when we go to June 3rd, 2020.
Okay.
Page 3, that there's Dawn, to me, Kanakowski resigned, period. And we then start getting into issues that we weren't necessarily sure. And so I don't believe that we should imply things that we don't know the full story about. And then the mayor wanted to bring up and address code of behavior, which is great. And then Amy pointed out that perhaps what we could do is, and this goes to then the next meeting, you also mentioned it in a retreat perhaps, to talk about what each of our boards are meant to do, what is the purpose, what is the design, and then what is the role of the chairperson. And so I was just uncomfortable with the way the language was written and implied, because we really don't know the full story there, and I don't think we need to.
What are you referring to? I mean, on which page?
Well, because
Which page? I'm sorry.
page 3,
Where?
7A, it reads down that it just, the way the narrative I disagree with. And if we watch the tape, it isn't that way. And then when we talked on the June 17th, 9 o'clock meeting, page 4, when we started to talk about the outreach committee, there was all of a sudden it became a diversity outreach, and we didn't accept it, but it wasn't presented as even a possible change. So I don't want something to say that we didn't accept it when we weren't even given an option to it wasn't on our agenda to change a committee's name. But all of that can be done at the retreat I love the retreat that you're suggesting. And those are my 2 objections to those 2 minutes.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Fred?
why don't we approve these minutes minus those 2 items, and then they can be refined, and we can look at them at the next meeting?
What's the council's pleasure?
Find what, I mean, just have staff, if they want, read through, look at the meeting portion for the 7A and write exactly what was said, and then we're just done with it. And we just move on. We've been circling this Kurlander situation for 8 meetings. I'm done with it. Can we please stop?
Fine by me, but it's whatever the council's pleasure is.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, and I'll second that, Chris. Is there further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Carr,
No.
Mayor Simmons,
Aye.
Councilmember Corey,
Aye.
Councilmember Gibson,
Aye.
Councilmember Forbes,
Aye.
Councilmember Carumba,
Aye.
Councilmember Purdon.
Okay, great, thank you. And Arlene, is there any other public comments in queue or
I
online?
don't see
or-
any, but Matt has said to tell you all that it's 31 million.
Okay,
Oh, this is the total?
nice.
Okay.
Great work, team.
Now we have to tell the other.
But no public comment?
I'm gonna make,
Yeah, just to be sure.
let's double check.
And council, last call with anything?
No,
Okay.
I'm hungry.
Yeah, well, just one thing.
Yes, Chris?
Has there been anything set up yet, Amy, on the retreat, or have you
No,
got?
Arlene was going to look at what we're doing, like all the things that we're supposed to be handling, and she was going to try to figure out a time that was convenient. I mean, I didn't.
We're gonna be reaching out to all of you. We do know the mayor's heading out of town right now for a few weeks, so we were gonna be reaching out to find a date, not to conflict with the budget hearing as well, because we have the budget hearing July 27th.
So she was going to try to fit it in somewhere.
Not that I'm going anywhere. Nobody's going anywhere.
Let's just have some place where we can drink, is all I can say.
Well, hey.
Can you go where you're going
Maybe this
without
will be
being quarantined?
Yeah, I know.
Maybe the.
You're not going
I
to New
did
York.
state by state, I know,
Are you
Chris.
going to more than one place?
Did we adjourn? I don't want to get up.
Yeah, motion to adjourn, we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody.